I can't hear you. Could someone say hello to me?
Hear you.
Hello.
Hi, Brandon.
Ah, that's better. I was beginning to think I was talking to myself. If you haven't been able to, could you take the time to put your name and organisation into the chat bar so that our note takers can just make a note of everybody that is present this evening. Give it a minute or so, and hopefully we'll have a few more joiners. I think as people join, I will just kick off by saying welcome. Welcome to the Northern Corridor Community Board meeting for February this year. And I'm Brandon Williams. I'm the chair for the meeting and would welcome you whether you are on the WebEx or if you joined through the remote live stream. And I would like even people on the live stream, if they wish to put a message on the chat, they are welcome to do so. We will also try and answer any of their questions as well. So welcome to everybody. Are we aware of any apologies for tonight's meeting?
Yes, Chair, we've got a number of apologies. Apologies from Councillor Doolan, Pauline McCall from Voice of Experience, Councillor McLaren, Gabby Mitas, Councillor McPake, Camille Tomzik from Van El, Diane Brisbane are tonight's apologies.
Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting, these were circulated with tonight's agenda, and hopefully you've had the opportunity to be able to review those. Is there anybody able to be a proposer for those minutes if they are felt to be in order? Do we have a proposer?
I'll propose them, Brandon.
Thank you, Claire. A seconder? Hopefully somebody that was present there. Was that Isabel?
Yes.
Thank you, Isabel. In terms of matters arising, I would suggest that we first go to the list of action points that are part of that set of notes and review those to see that they have been attended to and addressed. So it's a reasonable list. Let me find it. So the first item on the action points was for Matt Costello, and it was about the consultation results that were held and information relating to that. It was mainly about, I believe, how many participants took part in that consultation, and the question was how many of the participants were actually from the Northern Corridor. Is Matt able to give any indication of that?
Sure, Brandon, we have been looking, but we're trying to identify what information was available regarding the meeting, which none of us actually attended that meeting, and we've been unable to find any information that gives us specific information about the numbers of people attending, etc. So at this moment in time, we're still unable to find sufficient information to feed back on that. We'll continue to look at that and see if we can find any further information that's there.
I think the particular meeting that was talked about was the one to do with the council tax and the deficit of 54 million, at which obviously there were a small number of us present, and we were told that there were others online, and there was also a Survey Monkey survey done. So we have no further details.
Apologies, Brandon. I was reading that as a different action. I was relating to one that Anne-Marie had raised regarding a consultation that had taken place in the Cardowan area regarding that. Yes. Apologies for information.
Yeah, that was a later question that Isabel raised. Yes,
right.
But even the point to do with the original meeting to do with council tax, we don't know any details on that.
No, I'm sorry, I've misunderstood the action there. I'll certainly make further inquiries about that, Brandon, and feedback.
Okay. The other question that arises with respect to this, of course, is again the representation that we do get to Northern Corridor meetings. Yeah, we're trying to see that we're getting a good spread of people attending, but we don't seem to be able to find out. So should we roll this forwards, or will you be able to give some feedback in the interim, because the next meeting won't be for another quarter?
Yeah, I think it'd be good to maybe clarify exactly what information it is you're looking for in terms of attendance at any particular meetings on that, Brandon. Maybe it's worthwhile to get more information, the exact statistics that are being requested.
I think the point that was made was that there was a small group of people that attended a meeting. We had a report saying that the meeting, shall we say, was representative of the Northern Corridor, and there were some of us that felt that the small number of people surely wasn't representative. So we asked for further details on the, shall we say, how many people, but we don't seem to be able to get to that. Carol, sorry.
Can I just ask the question that if this was an action from a quarter, like from last quarter, and I do agree that from the minutes that have been drawn up, it isn't actually clear what the exactly what it was that they were supposed to be looking for. But if that wasn't clear 3 months ago, would it not have been appropriate to ask the chair of the board what the actual question was, or what the information was that we were looking for at that time, rather than waiting 3 months to then come to the board to say that you didn't understand what it was we were asking for?
I take it that's a question for Matt.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Apologies for that, absolutely. I will certainly make inquiries about the information that's been sought, and we'll make sure that's fed out to the board as soon as possible.
Could I also ask that that in future, when action points are being written down by whoever's taking the notes, that they're actually clearly stated as to what action the person is supposed to do? Because from this one on 3.3, it does not clearly state what consultation or anything else it is that we were actually asking.
I think that's a valid point. I think that what we'll do is we'll move on from that one, and I think we'll find what we'll find is we'll try and get to the bottom of these in the background. The next question was about accessibility to the documents relating to meetings like this, and you was going to look at that. I must admit, I did raise this again only a few weeks ago, that to the, shall we say, novice, if they go onto the NLC website, to find anything relating to community boards is a little bit of a search. And if you don't know we exist, you're never going to find us. That one was with Matt as well.
Yeah, this is something we have raised this with our corporate communications team, and we are you may be aware we do have our 9 community board my pages for each of the 9 community board areas. Within there are links to our website. We can access within the council's website, and on our social media you can access the council's website. We did ask at the last meeting, I'm understanding, of people to give us some particular examples regarding accessing it, whether there's some issues in that, and we did feed that back to our corporate communications, and it is an ongoing part of our communication strategy to ensure that we try and make this as accessible as possible. We'll certainly continue to feed that back, Brandon, and make our corporate communications team aware of that.
I think without knowing how many people are actually, should we say, being able to, here we are. I know there are 20 plus people in the WebEx meeting, but we don't know how many people are actually accessing this meeting online. We don't know how many people are accessing this meeting via the recording thereafter. The suggestion,
Brandon, that's not actually the case. We do report the number of people who attend the board meetings. We put that into the Community Empowerment Committee paper. They give the total number of people, and we can break that down by area. We do not know how many people actually view the recordings. We can do that, and at any time when we're watching this, we can watch online to see how many people actually join the meetings as well. You can do that as well. It's quite easy to check that on the YouTube channel to identify that information.
So it would be useful to know today, for instance, how many people are accessing this meeting, to know that how widespread our reach is.
Yeah, well, I can check that just now.
Chair, the viewing statistics for the last meeting, there was 133 views of the last board meeting.
And that was following the meeting?
Some during it, when it was broadcast live, and then mostly afterwards.
Right.
At the moment, Chair, I can advise you, Chair, there's 4 people watching the meeting at the moment.
Right. Okay. Okay. The next point, again for you, Matt. There was Caroline representing the young people. It was a request that she received an invitation to the next meeting. I believe she is actually on. So thank you for doing that. Because there was some suggestion that the young people had been missed out from the invitation that went out. So thank you for sorting that one out. Also, invites to tenants and residents associations. Not sure how many tenants and residents associations we have got on this meeting, but did an invite go out to them?
Yeah, we contacted our tenant participation team, Brandon, and asked them to ensure that all the relevant organisations were contacted through them.
Okay. I had an action to review the large number of items on the agenda in future. I think at this meeting we seem to have got a better handle on it, hopefully, and we should be able to move on reasonably quickly. There was an action on Margaret Kelly, which I know has been addressed. Margaret Kelly came and did a presentation on housing at the last meeting, and there was a feeling of the meeting that it didn't actually fulfil the requirements of the Northern Corridor area, and she came to the Northern Corridor Community Forum meeting and did a follow-up presentation there. However, her follow-up presentation was purely about social housing provision, and again there was a question raised about who should come to the board and talk to us about the wider planning and infrastructure issues that are within the Northern Corridor, which don't fall under the social housing remit. So that's a question I'm putting out there. Who do we invite to come and do that presentation?
Sure, we can pass that back to our colleagues in housing, so that, or if, unless Andrew wants to come in on that as well.
Andrew?
So is it more specifically what is the concern? Is that I'm assuming the concern is the number of houses being built, and then the resulting lack of infrastructure that comes with that in terms of, you know, school walls and that type of thing. Is that a type of question that you're using?
You're very faint, Andrew.
I'll take this forward. Is
That's
that
better.
help, Brandon?
Yep, that's better.
Okay, so I take it the question is that it's to do with the number of private sector developments that are being built in the area.
Yes, it is, and obviously infrastructure to support them.
Okay, so I suppose that would be the sort of, you know, our local housing strategy, and everything else that falls within that. So I'm fairly certain we had somebody presenting on that a few meetings past. Would that be true?
No, the person that came was Margaret Kelly, and her presentation only related to social housing.
Okay, so it's all to do with development itself. So that'd be a local development plan, which would maybe fit under planning. So perhaps somebody from the planning service, that might be a better option. But if you leave that with us, I'll come back with a suggested name and invite for the next board meeting.
Yes, that would be very useful. Thank you, Andrew. Alice.
Thank you, Brandon. A follow-up to Margaret Kelly's presentation on the 12th of January 2022, and we are still waiting for the revised statistics that Margaret promised, specifically for the Northern Corridor. We haven't received those as yet, so if someone could please contact Margaret and ask her would she forward the revised statistics that she promised to send. Thank you.
In response, Alice, I would say that the statistics that she gave are the actual statistics that are published on the NLC website. So I'm not sure what she would come back with, but certainly there are statistics for the Northern Corridor area published on the NLC website.
There is an outstanding email in the Northern Corridor Community Forum mailbox where Margaret promises to send further revised statistics, and to date she has not replied to her promise to do that, Brandon.
Okay, well,
and it's maybe around about the 13th of January 2022.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Andrew.
Yeah, Brandon, I can maybe answer that one, hopefully. I have received an updated report with relevant statistics for the Northern Corridor. So that shows us across the various tenures, whether it's private rented, private occupied, private owned, sorry, and indeed council owned. So we do have that report. So I'm unsure as to whether that's not been distributed more widely yet, but I'll certainly be able to circulate that, Brandon, so you can put that down as an action for myself.
Yes, okay, it would be good if that could be circulated. Claire.
It's just as a note on that for Andrew, if you could ensure that the revised statistics include all the Northern Corridor, because that was the issue before, that some portions were kept out after being in a different sub-market housing area.
Okay, Isabel? Isabel, you've got your hand up.
Sorry about that. I think the issue is that the statistics were North Lanarkshire on some occasions, and there was not statistics specifically on the Northern Corridor, which we asked for. And in other occasions, it was to do with social housing. And in many of the areas, there is no outlook for social housing. Well, in Gapcosh and Glenboig anyway. So from that perspective, the information was not useful. So a lot of the indicators as well, we couldn't see how well the Northern Corridor was doing regarding the whole of the North Lanarkshire, and the few that we did see, we were actually quite poor, which raised some concerns. So I think we gave Margaret a full picture of the type of statistics we were looking for, just so that the answer does not come back incomplete.
Thank you, Isabel. Andrew, does that give a flavour of what we're looking for?
Yeah, in the report that I've got, and I'm looking at, Brandon has all that, so I'll get that across. I'll just check that what's in there wasn't a draft, and I'll just get that across. That's not a problem.
Okay, thank you very much. The next point related to Brian, and I'm sure he will be, he probably already has been in touch with Anne-Marie regarding the beehives project. I don't know if you wish to say anything, Brian.
Yep, can you hear me okay? Yep, so yeah, I've been in touch with Anne-Marie. We've arranged for later in the year, once the summer starts. There's not really a lot of activity around about the beehives at the minute, so we've arranged with the Lanarkshire Beekeepers Society, the gentleman that helps run the beehives, to liaise with Cld Moss, and we'll get the kids in to the station later in the year.
That'd be good.
So that's been closed off.
Thank you very much. Anne-Marie?
Thanks, Brandon. Yeah, I've been. Brian has been in touch and looking forward to getting something arranged over the summer youth provisions for the kids to get a wee visit. That'll be exciting for them. I appreciate that, Brian. Thank you.
Isabel?
My hand's just still up.
Oh,
apologies.
And we had an ongoing issue relating to North Lanarkshire Health. Gabrielle was here responding on behalf of Evelyn. However, we weren't able to get clear responses, and Gabrielle was going to go back to Evelyn and get us some responses. We were hoping to have them before we came back to this meeting. I don't know if Gabrielle is actually here or Evelyn. Do we have anybody from NHS Lanarkshire?
Chair, apologies have been submitted by Gabby. Evelyn was on the call. I'm not sure if she's still there and can come in at this point. And our other colleague from NHS has had trouble joining the meeting.
We don't seem to get very much in the way of responses from NHS Lanarkshire. How are we going to actually address that particular issue? This has been ongoing for some time.
Chair, we come in. We'll ensure that we get a response to the issues that's been raised as part of this. If there's no attendance tonight, we'll ensure there is a response that's formulated and discussed with yourself beforehand and then shared with the rest of the board.
It just seems that they don't appear to be here tonight. At the last meeting, a representative was here but wasn't able to fully participate. And on prior occasions, we seem to have similar issues. It's been some time since they've been here, it would appear.
Yeah, we'll certainly feed that back to the partners, Brandon.
So are we going to have to wait another quarter before we get any responses from them?
I think what I was suggesting to you there is we'll speak to them as soon as we can and get a response formulated in relation to the issues that have been raised. We'll speak to yourself about that, Chair, and then we can share that with the board through our other means, rather than wait until a further meeting.
That would be preferable, because it has gone on, as I can feel, for at least 6, if not 9 months. This one.
We'll get feedback from them, and we'll ensure that somebody links in with yourself in relation to that, and then further dissemination of any information.
Okay. And the final action point was for Susan Ray. It was her first meeting, and it was to make sure that each of the areas across the Northern Corridor received information about the officer that covered their particular patch. I think that may have happened in the interim. I don't know, is Susan on?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, that information was shared, and I believe that I'm aware that some of the officers attended some local groups just to sort of introduce themselves in person.
Yes, I know certainly they've been in touch with Auchinlock, and I know they've been to a forum meeting. Isabel?
Susan, could I ask, we have had no contact. That's Gap Coast Residents and Tenants Association. If that could be arranged, I'd be thankful for that. Thank you.
Yep, certainly, Isabella. I can get your contact details after the meeting,
Okay.
and certainly the officers to get in touch with yourself.
Thank you.
Teresa? I think you're on mute, Teresa.
I've made contact with us, so thanks very much, Susan. Hopefully that'll be an ongoing relationship now.
Thank you.
Very much appreciated. I don't have a mouse, Brandon, and I can't work without one, so I'll be up and down here like a yo-yo.
All right. We'll bear with you. So has anybody else not had contact? Okay, so we're fine with that. Any other matters arising that anyone thinks of from those minutes? Isabel, you've still got your hand up?
My apologies.
Okay.
It should be down. My icon says it's down.
Yes, it's got. Anne-Marie, you've put your hand up.
Thanks, Brandon. Not from the minutes, but I just want to acknowledge the local community police officers and give them a personal thanks on the recent assistance that they provided to our community for some traffic control. And it's just to highlight the good works that are happening when partnerships actually work and people communicate with each other. So just to pass that on to Susan, that the community officers have been absolutely fantastic of recent. Thank you.
Well, that's great. Thank you for letting me know that, Anne-Marie. I'll certainly pass your thanks on to the officers.
Alice. Are you on mute, Alice?
Thank you, Brandon. I would like to refer to point 11 of the previous minutes. It's 11.1, where a discussion took place regarding a shared headship at Christon schools. I'd like to refer also to this. It was a piloting a multi-establishment leadership model with Christon Primary and Christon Secondary Schools, and refer also to the committee paper of May 2020, Education and Families, outlining North Lanarkshire Council's intention to develop a new school head teacher leadership operating model. I have been following this development, and the Times Educational Supplement has made reference to this, where it refers to these endeavours plan a huge cut in head teachers, and it has sparked a petition in Argyll and Bute, where the council wants to introduce executive heads, and the union warns there that it will reduce the number of head teachers from 84 to 14. Now, the Educational Institute for Scotland has now launched a petition against the proposals from Argyll and Bute Council. And the EIS petition says that the plan speaks to establish school clusters, as is the intention at Christon, overseen by the executive heads, which would decrease the current number of head teachers from 84 to around 14. And this has led to significant Educational Institute of Scotland member concern about how this will affect schools, teachers and pupils. So the EIS, the Educational Institute for Scotland, believes that school leadership is critical and every school and its community should have a head teacher in post. Adding, our starting point should always be to locate leadership as close as possible to practitioner practice, that we should not create a distance between those overseeing schools. They should be close to the teaching and learning that is happening in schools and should contribute to the delivery of a quality education for our young people. The petition states, the EIS petition states that these changes are simply a cost-cutting exercise that will not empower schools and support the attainment of pupils, but rather will damage educational delivery, quality and equity in Argyll and Bute. There are various stages in the ongoing consultation, which is due to culminate with a presentation of findings and refined proposals in May 2022. A spokesperson for Argyll and Bute Council says no decisions have been made regarding the future of our education service. We are in the process of carrying out a thorough, open and accessible consultation, listening to all stakeholders, and the feedback from this will be reported to the Council's Community Services Committee. And I'm sure that all
is the point here that you're saying that what is happening at Christon is a reflection of what has happened in Argyll and Bute?
I am drawing the meeting's attention to the concerns of Argyll and Bute, and my request at the meeting is that those responsible, whether it be Councillor Frank McNally, who leads the Education and Families Committee, or Gerard McLaughlin, who is Education Officer for the North, gives a presentation to the Northern Corridor Community Forum describing either the merits or the demerits of this model. I would also like to know about the thorough, open and accessible consultation that has been carried out with various stakeholders in North Lanarkshire Council. So I'm asking, Chair, please it be noted in the minutes that I am requesting a presentation from Education to set out the rationale and the merits or demerits of this proposal.
Is that something you could arrange for us, Matt?
Yeah, we'll certainly feed that back, Chair, and then get further feedback to the board.
It was the source of a heated debate towards the end of the last meeting, so it obviously has merit. Isabel?
Can I ask, is there a planned consultation in process, or is this yet again another decision made by council officers?
I think we were led to believe that a consultation had already taken place, but none of us were actually aware of it.
Which seems to be the case. It's a recurring theme regarding consultation, that we hear that people have gave their views and people have made themselves available as to what their thoughts on a particular matter. But when we actually ask for statistics, when we actually ask when it takes place, there seems to be, we're met with stony silence. I'm asking a question, has there been a consultation? Because I haven't seen it and I haven't been able to put my views across. Thank you.
Andrew.
Yeah, I just want to maybe make a couple of comments on this one. We have to be careful we don't compare ourselves with Argyll and Bute. And the concerns that they've got, they're completely different from a North Lanarkshire context, because Argyll and Bute's a very rural authority, many small primary schools. When you have a joint headship, yet there's a significant geographical difference between where that head is based. But when you look at the headshires of Christen primary and Christen secondary schools, they're cheek by jowl. So that is a different model. So we have to be careful in that. The EIS are very rightly raising those concerns because they have to defend their profession, and any profession would do the same. But across the council, we have to make some hard decisions coming up in the next 2 to 3 years. There's about £40 million worth of savings have to come out of the council budget. So these savings have to come from somewhere. Now, whether that's the efficiency of a management structure, as in the schools, or whether we start cutting things like grass cutting and things like that, that's the decisions that we have to make going forward. That's the reason that we're having the pilot. That's the reason that we're going down the line of looking at how it works within certain areas, and then we can assess the effectiveness or not of that. But without actually doing something, then we'll be left doing nothing. So it's just important we have to put this in a little bit of context.
I think the point that's being raised was the lack of consultation has caused this concern. Carol.
Thank you, Chair. Being somebody that comes from Argyll and Bute and has been educated all my life from primary right up until 6th year in Argyll and Bute, I know the schools in Argyll and Bute very, very well. Having done school transport for them, I know them even better. To reduce them down to 14 head teachers is ridiculous, but it is exactly the same whether you have one head teacher in a building, or it's exactly the same whether they're a few hundred yards down the road or whether they're a few miles down the road. That doesn't matter. It's still a head teacher, is not in the building. That's the difference. And see this that we keep getting from the council. You've got to make cuts, and it's either we try this or we have to stop cutting grass. Stop that. I really don't care about your grass. I really don't. There's so much more that you need to get right before you even start going on about cutting grass. Children's education has been damaged enough by COVID and the lack of hubs. My son was in 3rd year, put in a hub and was looked after by primary teachers and was asked to go down and sing primary songs in the afternoon rather than being able to get on with his own work. Right? Now, that's not good enough. The North Lanarkshire Council have damaged children's education enough through COVID. So don't start going on about it's either we try this with education or we stop cutting your grass, because we've all heard it, and it's not going to wash anymore. You cannot damage children's education anymore. And that's it. And like I say, don't talk to me about the fact that Argyll and Bute are totally different scenario from North Lanarkshire. I grew up in Argyll and Bute. I now live in North Lanarkshire, and I can tell you, a head teacher being in the building is what counts. It doesn't matter whether they're a few hundred yards or a few miles, like I said. It does not matter whether the head teacher is in the building or not. That is what counts. Thank you, Chair.
Isabel? Isabel, you've got your hand up still.
Sorry, I think a pilot at this stage of this that can be of this magnitude, and I have to say, it is maybe past relationships, and Andrew, you're here as a council officer and the other council officers here. The relationships have been so bad with North Lanarkshire throughout the last 5-6 years. And a pilot, where there is a cost-cutting exercise, for us means that the executive are going to put that through across North Lanarkshire. And I think for what children and parents have had to suffer through COVID, this is an extremely bad taste, And at this moment in history is actually inappropriate. It is not something that should be happening. And I know that the council has got a difficult job. I know they have got problems. But what we have continually, without any consultation, is that a statutory duty? No, we'll cut it. There is nothing that, and Carol might go on about grass cutting or whatever, but things like that are important to people, and they keep happening without any, can I say, even PR exercise. It's just a decision that is made about subjects. Is that my statutory duty? Can I get away with not providing it? Because that's what I'll do, and it just marches on. Everywhere we turn round, things are getting cut, and even the services that are there are not being protected. They're even being cut. So even the periphery stuff. I was at a meeting with Des Murray one day and said, is it my statutory duty to provide a library? Well, if I put up a shelf with 5 books on it, do you think that constitutes me having a library? This is the types of discussions that we're getting down to. And to cut head teachers that is seen as one of the most important leadership roles inside schools when kids haven't been at school because of COVID is really a pure show.
Alice?
Andrew, at one point you said in a written correspondence that you did not want to be a message board, that you are our community champion. Now, in terms of that, point one from me is, I think that was a very poor comparison, grass cutting and the delivery of a quality education for the young people across North Lanarkshire Council. And I would ask you to reflect on that. What I am asking is about young people's education. Point two, we did, and we have been accommodating to a certain extent regarding your role as community champion. And I have to say that I heard you speak as a council official on this occasion, rather than the Northern Corridor community champion, who should be listening to our genuine concerns. And I would lastly reiterate, and I have the feeling that it is the view of this meeting, that you as our community champion in a supportive role request a presentation by either Councillor Frank McNally or Gerard McLaughlin to give a presentation to the Northern Corridor Community Forum regarding the merits or demerits of this proposal. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
I think the message about putting a presentation to us has already been made. To wrap this up, Carol?
Can I just ask one question? Is there any other schools or areas within North Lanarkshire that this is being trialled in?
Yes.
What other schools is it being trialled in?
I think that's going to be a question that's going to have to come be answered by the education people.
We'll take a note of that question, Chair, and get as much information as we can regarding that.
I'm just curious to see if any of it is happening in Motherwell.
May I give the note that's at the end of a document that I have? I only have campuses in Scotland, one in the Highlands, Dornoch Firth Campus, Kinlochleven Campus, North Ayrshire Garnock Campus, Argyll and Bute Lochgilphead Joint Campus, Argyll and Bute Rothesay Joint Campus, Perth and Kinross Community School of Auchterarder, Perth and Kinross, as at November 2019, Perth and Kinross Fairview School, Perth and Kinross St John's RC Roman Catholic Academy. And this was in response to, can you signpost us to examples of other schools operating the multi-establishment leadership model? So on this list, campuses in Scotland, I can't see any, and I stand corrected as usual. I can't see any in North Lanarkshire Council.
Thank you, Alice. I think we need the response from the education people from North Lanarkshire. They are the only people that can actually give us the correct response to this.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair, is it possible to ask for that information as a matter of urgency to be circulated, you know, urgently rather than waiting to the next board meeting?
Is that possible, Matt? A suggestion was made by Alice, for instance.
Are you talking in relation to the question, is this pilot been carried out in any other parts of North Lanarkshire? Is that the question you're looking for clarification?
I think it's the whole issue to do with the Christon campus.
All I can do is we can raise the issues that have been brought to the meeting tonight with the relevant service, Brandon, and we'll see what feedback we get from that.
Okay. And just to move on slightly, are there any other community matters that haven't been brought forwards onto the agenda? Because we didn't seem to receive a great deal when the request went out.
Chair, could I just see if you wanted to go back and go over some of the issues you had said earlier on about the lack of representation from NHS, but we've now got Anne Alexander in attendance from NHS.
Is Anne Alexander here to represent NHS?
Hi there. I'm here to represent the Health Improvement Department instead of Gabby tonight. So I'm a Health Improvement Team Leader. And one of my roles as part of the Community Planning Partnership is to support with the note taking as well. So this evening it's my responsibility to take robust action notes for the meeting as well. So I'm doing that as people are speaking as well. And Evelyn Ryan, my colleague from the Health and Social Care Partnership, is here tonight as well. So in relation to health improvement activity, then I would be able to give an update on some of the work that's going on at the end in the partner updates, and Evelyn would be able to respond to anything around the Health and Social Care Partnership. Is that okay?
Well, if Evelyn Ryan is actually on the meeting,
yes, she
is she able to respond to the questions that were previously raised for her to reply to?
Hi. Right. Are you wanting an update about the new build just now? Is that what the question is, Chair?
The original question was about the new build, and we received a report from yourself delivered by your colleague Gabby at the last meeting, and that was not considered robust enough as a reply, and she was sent off with some questions for you, but we've never had any response from them.
Apologies, my understanding. I thought I did put in some response, but that may have been mixed up or confused by a meeting we had with Alice. So I apologise for that. So do you want me to go ahead just now about?
If you can let us know what's happening with the proposed health centre, yes.
Yes. The contractor started off last week, starting work on the site. So it's going to plan at this point in time. So the project hoping to be completed in 18 months' time, and will be handed over to health roughly around about July 2023. When that happens, the other services that's provided by Glasgow, not people, but resource will be transferred over and will be provided from that clinic. For example, you'll have diabetic, mental health, podiatry, physiotherapy, dietetics, midwives, etc. So there's quite a few services we've transferred over. So it's quite exciting in the fact that it'll be a purpose-built building to be able to provide health services to the Northern Corridor. And when I say the Northern Corridor, that's all the areas within that area, Moody's, Burn, Christen, Muirhead, Steps. So that's the update I have at the moment. I've got no more information than that just now.
Can I ask, is there any documentation that is available to be circulated so that everybody can see what is being covered for in this new venture?
I've just sent a kind of brief note. Not everybody would have been able to see that. It's because it was late on today. I managed to get it out, but I can gather that information and share it before the next meeting.
Carol. I think you're on mute, Carol.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. You're talking about the clinics and things like that, the services changing over from Glasgow Health Board, but what's happening about the services that are still going to be covered by Glasgow Health Board? Has anybody spoken to them about their staff continuing to provide those services but from the new clinic?
There's been conversations, discussions been taken at a higher level, but looking at resource transfer, etc. So that's been discussed. I don't have the detail of that. I don't get privy to that sort of information, but I know there was a report drawn together with costings, etc. How that will look, what's that, as I say, the resource transfer. So that's been discussed at the moment.
I'm not talking about resource transfer. I'm talking about Glasgow Health Board staff, like their consultants, etc., coming to do their consultations in that building.
It would be Glasgow will be providing that, it'll be Lanarkshire.
No, there'll be some services that are still provided by Glasgow. So what has there been any discussions about the Glasgow consultants coming to that building to do their consultations?
No.
No.
I think, Carol, can I say something? I think until we see something in black and white, we don't actually know who's covering what.
No, Brandon, you see, this is the thing that the Northern Corridor Community Forum had a discussion with Alice, please remind me his name. Evelyn, what's your boss's name?
Raymond Taylor.
Raymond Taylor. We had discussions with Raymond Taylor at length, and he even came to the board, and he agreed on the clinics that would be run from there, and he also had agreed about looking at the consultants coming rather than people from here for the items that they would still be going to Glasgow Health Board for, rather than everybody going to Glasgow Hospital for a consultation. Then they would look at the consultants coming to that clinic and putting on consultation clinics from that health centre. But I mean, see the discussions we've had with Raymond Taylor. Nothing happened since then?
Until we see something in black and white, I think all these discussions are somewhat conjecture.
Well, this is what has nothing happened with these discussions that we've had and email correspondence we've had.
Carol, I can't give you that information.
Until we see something in black and white, that may very well be the case.
There's a lot of discussions going on at a higher level, I have to say. I know that for a fact, but I don't have privy of that information at this particular point. But as soon as we do have it, we'll share that with the board.
Claire.
It's just a question in a similar vein. A great many residents of the Northern Corridor have their GP services in Glasgow, and it's just to see what kind of cross-boundary work has occurred between the two health boards to ensure that moving forwards we're not ping-ponged between the health boards as we have been done in the past.
Right, I'm not quite sure. Obviously, the GPs who are in Lanarkshire in the Northern Corridor will have patients who live in Glasgow, and they will be services in Glasgow will take care of them. But if the patients are living in Lanarkshire under, say it's a GP in Glasgow, for example, just in Rickhazy, for example, they'll have patients in Steps area, then Lanarkshire will pick that up. It's a bit like when they were doing the flu vaccination clinic. We provided the vaccinations to the patients who lived in the Northern Corridor, whether they had a GP in Glasgow or not. So I don't know if that's answered your question.
It's more in terms of moving forward, what we found with some people who have GPs in Lanarkshire, some people who have GPs in Glasgow. You can get bounced between the two in terms of things like physiotherapy and mental health services. There's no, and it's because the two health boards don't speak to each other. So has there been work to improve that communication between the two health boards to make sure people don't fall through the gaps?
Yes, there has. And I think, for example, you made an example there about mental health is provided in Glasgow at this particular point. But once this building's complete, then that service will transfer over to the Northern Corridor and the patients will be seen by our mental health teams in that particular area. That's just an example of one.
So if you were a Lanarkshire resident, but your GP was in Gilbertfield,
yeah,
you would automatically get your mental health services
in the Northern Corridor. Yes, absolutely.
Isabel. Isabel?
Evelyn, I don't want to go into too much detail here, but I did raise the current service level from the clinics that are there at the moment. And I asked Mr. Taylor if he could rectify some of that. And again, without going into too much detail, if you present yourself at a GP, the GP thinks you need a blood sample, you will go and you will leave the surgery, you will phone up at a later date and you will get you'll return to the surgery to get your form. You'll keep that form in the house. You will then phone the clinic. You will then get an appointment, which is maybe 2 weeks later, as much as that, to get a blood sample taken. And for somebody that's elderly or somebody that is disabled or someone who has chronic illness, that is ridiculous. We are going to a GP, we're having an appointment, we can't get bloods taken, we have to leave the surgery, we have to go back to the surgery, we have to pick up a form, we have to phone another service, make an appointment for a blood sample, return back to that particular clinic to get the blood sample taken. And it could be something like 4 weeks from seeing a doctor. Now, again, not to go into great detail, in my particular family, that almost caused a death 6 months ago. It is unacceptable that you can wait 4 weeks when a doctor sees that you need a blood sample taken, and a simple blood sample would have confirmed that that person needed hospitalised, and it happened 4 weeks later. Now, Mr. Taylor said that he was going to look at that. It has not been addressed. I had the same incident 10 days ago, where ask for a blood sample, go back and get a form, go back to the house, phone for an appointment, wait 2 weeks for an appointment, and then go and get a blood sample. That is not a service, and it's do it yourself, and you're asking someone who might be confused, who's someone who's very ill, who's taking tablets. There is so much in that process for that person to remember, especially if your health is compromised. It is unacceptable, and something has to be done now. Now, can I ask that you take that back to Mr. Taylor and that this gets resolved once and for all?
Will do, Isabel. The only thing I will say just now, there's a lot of work going on in IT, and in that particular area, it's called ICE or something, so there's some improvement whereby that'll take away all that.
Well, you go to my GP and a nurse or a doctor takes a blood sample and they deal with it. That's all I want. I don't want 3 visits, a form and a 2-week delay. I just want to go to my doctor, you need a blood sample taken, and somebody takes it at that appointment, and you don't need 3 appointments later. In this day and age, that is not a difficult task, but that is what faces people in the Northern Corridor. And that is more urgent, I feel, than getting an update on what's happening with the unit. That is a service that people are having to deal with day and daily in the Northern Corridor. and it's unacceptable.
I'll take that back, Isabel.
Thanks, everyone.
Teresa.
That's not only happening in the Northern Corridor, that's happening over in the Coatbridge locality, and I dare say it's happening in a lot of other localities just now. The thing about our area is that they've actually stopped us having to go back to the doctors to pick up the envelope to take up to the clinic. I think it's a disgraceful setup that somebody has to go to a doctor and then they've got to travel to Coatbridge to get bloods taken. And my concern when this new Muirhead centre opens is that people in Glenboig haven't got direct transport to Muirhead. People living in Ramone just now in our community have to walk down to Glenboig to get a bus to Moodiesburn if their doctor's over in Moodiesburn. So really, I mean, the whole setup is absolutely disgraceful, and I ditto everything that you've just said there, Isabel. Something needs done about it. It's a disgrace.
Can we move this on a little and just finish off with, I've lost whose hand was up. It was Carol. Quickly, Carol.
Can I just say to both Teresa and Isabel, I'll deal with this tomorrow. I contacted Morag Dendy the last time that this was an issue, and it got resolved the next day. So I'll contact her tomorrow morning and get it resolved once and for all.
Okay, thank you, Carol. I'm not sure how you have that power, but please.
Sorry, Chair. It's through the forum. We sit on the PPF, the Public Partnership Forum, at the NHS. So
Right.
as chair of the forum, I sit on that.
Right. Okay. Let's move on to the community champion, Andrew Mcpherson.
Thanks, Brandon. I don't really have that too much to say. The only thing I would like to just a few quick points. Just first of all, I think as Evelyn's alluded to, I do welcome the commencement of the works down at the new Christ Community Hub. 18 months from now, hopefully, that facility will be fully up and running, and it's the start of the hub programme throughout the council in the Northern Corridor as well. Steps Primary School, I'm glad to say that the work's there. If they're not fully complete, they're as good as. And engagement will start with the local community at the beginning of March as to the repurposing of the modular units there. So hopefully we can get some form of community facilities back after the current school term. I'd just like to say thanks to Alison Carroll for inviting me and getting invites to the community forum, which I'll be happy to attend going forward. And just for information, people will be aware that the council will hopefully be aware that the council budget has been set for 2022-23. Details of that obviously are on the council website as well. It's about a budget of £887 million, a very substantial budget that the council has. But within that, there'll be £13 million of one-off investments coming in 22-23 to support the area coming out of COVID as part of the COVID recovery programme for the council. So that's all I have to say. Brandon, nothing particularly specific. Thank you.
Any questions for Andrew, other than those that already we've had? Okay. Input from the Community Partnership, Community Learning and Development Service. There's a short presentation, I believe, from Eleanor.
That would be myself, Chair. It's David Young.
Okay.
Okay. Apologies. First of all, I should have said Eleanor Rafferty, one of my colleagues, couldn't make it this week. So I'm here from the Community Learning and Development Service, and also one of my colleagues, Leslie Ingalls, is in the room as well, and you'll be hearing from her in a wee second. We'll both kind of get through some of the points in the presentation, if that's okay. We're also joined, I think you've mentioned already, by Caroline Simpson, who works in the Community Learning Development team as well, who's here obviously representing the young people in the corridor area. I know that time is short. I know you've got a lot still to cover on the agenda, so we will try and keep it brief. And obviously we'll kind of take any questions that folk have got at the end, but we'll try and get through the bullet points as quickly as we possibly can. This is basically the presentation is based on something that only comes up in this form every 3 years. So it was just to kind of flag that up. We normally do that through the community planning structures, which obviously have changed, and the boards are now the way to do that. So just to give you a bit of background about why we've asked to present this evening, and we're doing the same across all the other community board areas as well. But we'll try and keep it as closely linked to the Northern Corridor as we possibly can. I have a presentation here. Gary, are you able to share it, or do you want me to share it on the screen?
David, just go ahead and share it. Ros has got it if you need it.
It's fine. I'll give it a bash and see if I can get it on here.
Is this the presentation that was circulated as part of the notes for the meeting?
As far as I know, Chair, it was the plan that was circulated, which goes behind this.
Okay, so we've had an opportunity to scan it.
Good, that's great. That's really helpful. Okay. So if folk can see that okay, I can't see you now, but if folk can see that okay, just to give you a little bit of background, I said there that I work for the Community Learning Development team, but I don't want to make the assumption that everybody knows what Community Learning and Development, or CLD for short, is. So just very, very quickly, just to say that our work is about engaging with disadvantaged or vulnerable individuals, families or groups to engage them in learning. So the real focus is about getting people involved in learning, but that's generally done in quite an informal way. So it's different from schools, from primary schools, secondary schools, or folk going on to college or university. It's done much more on a localised level within communities, largely in community centres, libraries, or any venues that we can get access to. But it's about changing people's lives for the better. So that's just a kind of a brief summary about what we do. We base that on national CLD priorities that are there for community learning development across the whole of Scotland. And those are largely about work with adults, work with young people, and the building of community capacity. So a lot of the work that we do is based around those kind of priorities, if you like. Within the council, within our team, we have teams set up around those. So we have a youth work team, an adult learning team, but we also have a family learning team as well. In North Lanarkshire, family learning, where parents and children learn together, is a really big bit of the work that we do here, much more so than in other local authority areas across Scotland. So we actually have a slightly broader team covering some wider topics. But we're not the only people that do community learning development. Obviously, there's a wide variety of different agencies that do that. So New College Lanarkshire, NHS Lanarkshire, Roots to Work, etc. But there's a whole load of different organisations that provide learning and skills within communities. So if I can just move the slide on, hopefully. Oh, sorry. So the CLD Partnership is a partnership of those organisations across North Lanarkshire. So it's been established for just over 20 years, and it brings together a lot of those organisations, which are the big ones that I mentioned there, but also local organisations providing those services at grassroots level within this board area and within others as well, just to make sure that we're supporting each other and we're all basically working together on the same priorities. To do that, we have a plan. So our plans are produced every 3 years, and there's some legalities around that as well. There are regulations that the Scottish Government require plans to be drawn up every 3 years and done in partnership. So as we mentioned, the plans have already been circulated for you to have a look at, but they are certainly working plans, that they're working documents, and the hope is that those change and adapt over the 3-year life of the plan. We are scrutinised in the work that we do, so a bit like schools that were mentioned earlier on, we do work within a framework called How Good Is Our CLD, and Her Majesty's Inspector of Education do come out to inspect us on that. And up until recently, this was supported by 6 locality CLD partnerships. So we used to have a locality partnership for the North area with a lot of those providers that I mentioned there earlier on, working together and coming together usually every other month to talk about work in the area. Now, given that the community boards are now in place, we've stood down those partnerships in favour of working more closely with the community boards, and we'll come back to that in a wee minute, just about how we do that. Okay, I'm going to pass over to Leslie now, just to give us some examples of work that we do in the area.
Thanks, David. So yeah, just very quickly, we wanted to highlight just some of the work that the partnership has been involved in the past. So firstly, the digital inclusion project, which is an example of where all the providers came together. They recognised that IT was being delivered across the partnership and wanted to standardise the training, the content, the learners' expectations and experiences under one branding, so that wherever people saw that branding, they understood what they could expect and what was on offer. And also in terms of celebrating learning and achievement, that's something that happens locally, as well as a slightly bigger annual celebration that we were able to have. But we also continue to share achievements through the NL community newsletter, which is widely circulated, and also in terms of the social media channels that we use to continually update people on what's happening locally and learners' journeys and achievements. A little bit more specifically, our main office space is within the Pivot Community Centre. That's also where the main public computer suite is housed, and there's also access to Moodiesburn Library. There we have community-based youth work and adult learning happening in the Pivot Centre. And within our adult learning, we have a particular focus in both adult literacy and also English as a second or additional language. And that's including working with families that are coming into the local authority through the resettlement programme. We work very closely with schools within the area, and we have a member of staff based within Christon High School offering young people additional support, and also as part of the Futures Friday offer, contributing to that in particular through the Living Life to the Full programme. And within the primary sector, we have staff that can offer additional parental support and family learning. And again, we work very closely with our head teachers within the primary sector and our family learning centres to help us identify parents and families that could benefit from our service. I'm just going to pass over to David again.
Thanks, Leslie. So just to kind of wrap up then, we spoke there just about the plan. So as the chair mentioned, the plan's been circulated for folk to have a look at, and hopefully to kind of give us feedback, as I say, as we move on. The plan mirrors the plan for North Lanarkshire. Obviously, you know, most of our key organisations in North Lanarkshire are working towards that plan, so the Cld Partnership is no different. But we have got a list of key priorities underneath that we as a community learning development partnership want to make sure that we target, and a few of those bullet points are there. I'm not going to get through them all because I know we're really tight for time, but just the last point there at the bottom, just to kind of reiterate what's mentioned in the plan, that it is definitely a planning portfolio approach this time round for this current plan. So rather than trying to kind of rewrite plans or to be very specific within certain areas of planning, where there's already a plan in existence that links in, like our plan for young people, our plan for adult learning, family learning, the plan for the community and voluntary sector that our colleagues in Van El have led, and we've got representation tonight. Rather than trying to reinvent those or reword those, we've just directly linked to those within that plan. And again, as those change, then our overall plan will change. So just to finish off then, I suppose our kind of key ask then of the board this evening is really just about that element of community engagement. As we mentioned back at the start, we no longer have the locality partnership for the Community Learning Development Partnership in the north, and it's about looking forward now to how we can make sure that those key links are there between our Cld partnership and yourselves as a board, because it's definitely a key theme within the plan. So we want to make sure that the views of the board are represented as we go forward, but also the views of the learners that we're currently working with, who give us feedback on a day-to-day basis, that you're aware of that as a board as well, and that you get that information so that you can look at all the information that's there and make decisions based on that. So some of that engagement, it could take a wide variety of different formats. It could be about, you know, as I say, using existing forums and tying into existing organisations, but it could also be about specific surveys or evaluations that hopefully we can work on together as we go forward. One of the examples that we've got currently just now, just to finish off, is a survey that we put out to learners, which we've now opened up a bit more widely across the community and to other organisations, asking about their use of digital equipment within the community facilities that we run. So Leslie had mentioned earlier on, for example, that we have a computer suite within the Pivot Community Centre in Moodiesburn. So just to try and get a bit more of a sense of how people are going to use that in the future, and trying to make sure that our services reflect that as we move forward. So if that's something that members of this board would be keen to complete, I can certainly pass that on to Matt and to Gary to make sure that the link goes out with the minutes for folk to complete. So that's just one example, but I suppose I'm keen to kind of throw that back now, Chair, just for if there's any questions, certainly we're happy to take them, whether it's about the CLD team within the council or the wider CLD partnership. As I say, one of our colleagues from Van Ale, who sits in the partnership, is here as well. And if we can have a bit of a discussion then about how we move forward, that would be great.
Thank you very much, David. And from our perspective, within our LOIP, children and young people are one of the concerns that we have. Would you be engaging with the Northern Corridor to support that activity?
Yes, so as we say, Caroline, who's here this evening, works on our youth work team within the community learning development team in the council. But yeah, more widely, we have a youth voice structure across North Lanarkshire, which takes in young people that we're directly working with within CLD and within schools within the council, but also much more widely as well. So some of the community and voluntary organisations that Van El supports, and Kirsty will be directly linked into that. We make sure that those groups are involved as well. So there are structures there, and we'd be keen to make sure that those do tie in. So again, it's a two-way process. So where this board is looking for that information or to do that consultation, we can help, but also in terms of the other way around, where those young people want to put questions to yourselves, then hopefully we can help to facilitate that.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for David? Anne-Marie.
Thanks, Brandon. I'm very well aware of the work that CLD do in the Moodiesburn area. I have accessed it previously with my own daughter. My concerns around the youth provisions that are available via CLD, they're not wholly inclusive, as there's quite a wide majority of communities, especially in the Northern Corridor, that can't access these services, a lot of it to do with transport links. And is there any sort of way of addressing these youth provisions that are made to be more accessible to the smaller communities that can't travel, that can't get to Moodiesburn? You know, there's a demographic within our own community. This will be our third year come the summer of having youth provisions in our community. And, you know, there's a statutory service that should be there for our youth. And it's not happening in our community. And I'm sure it's not happening in quite a few of them. So irrelevant of all the photos that are put up there on the screen and all the good work that it says that it's doing, there's a majority of people not able to access it. So how do we address that, and what can we do about it?
Okay, I'm happy to address that, Chair, if that's okay. So yes, the Community Learning Development Service and our partners, because obviously we're here on behalf of the wider CLD partnership, as you'll know, is not a universal service. It's not a statutory service. So we don't, we don't have provision in every street in every area. But what we try to do, and I mentioned it quite a lot in the plan, is to target our resources to those who need it most. So I'd be really interested to continue that conversation then about the targeting and whether we're targeting the right areas and whether we're targeting the right families and the right communities. And I think that's an ongoing conversation. And as you'll know, that changes as we move forward, as areas changes and the learners that we work with change. And it's not all about the geography. Obviously, we try to target based on need. So regardless of the street that somebody lives in, regardless of who they are, where they come from, if they have a particular need, we'll try to address that. So I suppose that's just the kind of first point. In terms of the transport side of it, we have invested a large amount within the council this year in terms of our youth services around transport, far higher than that. Certainly remember over the last 20 years of working in the service, So that's been definitely a positive over the last 2 years during COVID to have access to that funding to allow us to be able to do that. So that's taking the form of buses, taxis, etc. But what we have also done is try to shift where we can some of that provision online. So some of that traditional group work or some of those traditional projects that would be done in a centre-based capacity over the last year or two have been done online where possible. Now I keep saying where possible because we know that for a lot of young people that kind of digital side isn't possible, but certainly it has helped and we have had a lot of young people accessing it in that way. So, but as I say, certainly happy to continue that conversation about how well we're targeting and also happy to pass that to our partners as well, because that's exactly what we're keen to see tonight about how we get that information and how we pass it out to our partners.
Thank you. Isabel?
Is it possible, David, to get data, say, by postcode of where you're actually delivering service or where service users are locating the service throughout the Northern Corridor? There's 7 villages and it would be really interesting to know who is actually taking up the service, and that might help close some gaps as to why there is no response from a particular area, or do indeed they know about the service that's there. Is there any way that we can get that data?
Yes, certainly. So again, speaking on behalf of the CLD team within the council, we have a management information system where we record everyone who takes part in any of our activities. So it's a bit like when you're at school and you get registered when you go in each day. So we've got an online system that does that. So gathering that information by postcode or by community board area certainly shouldn't be a problem. What we can't do quite so easily is in terms of the partnership, which is the kind of main part of the discussion this evening about the partnership plan. We do have a number of partner agencies that we work with that we mentioned there through Van L, through the college, through Routes to Work, and we certainly don't have a mechanism just now at the moment for sharing that level of detail on a partnership basis. What we are working on is joint performance indicators that we're going to be using over the 3 years of the plan, and that's mentioned in the plan. So we should have much more robust information about numbers in each area, but in terms of breaking that down to postcode area, we might still not be able to do that, but certainly each individual organisation, if they can do it, will be able to do that. So I can take that as an action to get the council's CLD team information to you for the next meeting. That's certainly not a problem.
Just a comment on your presentation. You did say that you had facilities in like Christen High School and some primary schools in the area. Do you actually have partners in schools for special needs? Because a lot would generate from there. So, for instance, you might be in Gartcosh, but your kid might go to Glencrine in Cumbernauld. Or might go to the school at Coatbridge. So they're out with the area that they live in, and they're not at the primary schools or they're not at the secondary schools in a particular area because of maybe their learning disability. How do you pick that up?
Yeah, I'm happy to pick that up, and my colleague Leslie can feel free to come in on this as well. So in terms of the high schools, we mentioned that we have homeschool partnership officers. Leslie had mentioned that there's a partnership officer based at Christen High School, but you're absolutely right. We do have partnership officers who also work with our additional support needs schools as well, because as you say, the young people that go to those schools can come from right across North Lanarkshire. So those young people within ASN schools do have access to a homeschool partnership officer. But wider than that, those young people outside the school also, like everyone else, have access to staff like Caroline, who's here tonight, within their own geographic area as well. And again, we know there are barriers depending on their background and their ability to attend some of those groups. But we are constantly working around better ways to do that and to engage with all aspects of the community, regardless of their needs. So that work's certainly ongoing. Leslie might be able to give us a bit more detail. Leslie runs a team that works with the primary schools and can maybe give you some more background
Yeah,
on how
absolutely.
that works?
We do have staff that work within the ESN primary schools too. So what we would do, as you mentioned quite rightly, sometimes a child is accessing a school that's out with the area that they stay in. And the member of staff would kind of negotiate with the family the best way to access our support. For some families, we've found that they prefer to come into the community where the school is based and access support from and with other families that are also accessing that school. In other occasions, that's not the way that they would rather access support. So we would then look locally, maybe within the geographical area that the family live, and see if we can identify the best member of staff to support them in that their own community, rather than the geographical area that the school is based in. But that's something that we would discuss and negotiate with each individual family to try and find a solution that suits everyone's needs.
Thanks very much, Leslie.
Thank you. And finally, Teresa.
David, can I ask how many of our communities in the Northern Corridor are represented on the youth forums, and how many young people have got a voice from the Northern Corridor in these youth forums? If you could get the kind of figures for us, because I know we've been waiting for a wee while now for our community to be represented. I don't know if COVID's had an impact in that, but I would like to know how many of our communities across the Northern Corridor are actually represented. The other thing I'd like to say is the CLD partnerships were very effective, and for years I sat around those tables myself. Can you inform me how effective the community board kind of set up is at present in reaching out, you know, to look at the gaps that have been identified for children and young people in our communities? And I know the subgroups getting put together, but I think, you know, it's been too long coming, and there must be a massive gap now in reaching it. And we can't keep blaming COVID for all these things. I think, you know, the CLD partnerships were very effective, and I want to know when we're going to be effective round about this community board and reaching out and doing the same kind of work as the partnerships we're doing. And the other thing I'd like to say is that we're actually working through community solutions with 11 additional support needs schools in North Lanarkshire, and we're providing a programme called Without Walls, and it's about all the outdoor work that we do, bringing children from the schools together, but also bringing families together, and we've been doing that since last year, offering respite at the weekend. And I'd like to ask yourself, Leslie, well, it's a long time since I've seen you, how are you engaging with the community groups for these children? Because in all the delivery that we're doing in Glenboig, I don't think anybody has actually engaged with us for any additional support need child to come to any of our clubs. So I'd like to ask what's happening there as well. That's me, thanks.
Problem. I'll try to take those just one by one. So the first question then that you asked was about the young people representation through the youth voice structures that we've got there. I can certainly, again, like the information mentioned earlier on, we should be able to get that for you without too much fuss, so we can pass that on. What I can say anecdotally is that certainly over a long period of time we have had good representation from across the Northern Corridor area. Although we certainly can't give out names or details, we can give you the numbers based on the postcode areas, and hopefully that'll give you an idea of the numbers that we're working with. But I suppose as part of this conversation, and as we mentioned earlier on, we'd be keen to try and look at ways that those young people, as young people themselves, but as learners as well, and as learners that are engaging with CLD, to find ways to make sure that we can link them in as close as possible with the board, to make sure that the information from them gets to you, and vice versa. And as providers, as organisations, that we can then use that to reflect that in our services, to plan the right services at the right time and the right place. So that's certainly not a problem. The bit that you asked there about the CLD partnerships, so as we mentioned there, as part of the new plan, the CLD partnerships had been stood down in favour of the new boards. We know that the community boards are the way that the community planning process has been driven forward in North Lanarkshire, and that it's imperative that all partner organisations that ourselves work through the board. So we're keen to look at ways that we can do that. We know that that's the structure that everybody's working to now. It's just about finding the right way to do that. And I suppose that's where we're looking for your advice and your help around that, because each individual community board will be different and the partners around that table will be different. So where there are gaps, where there are organisations that aren't represented, where we have to find a different way to kind of gather that information and gather that need, then we'll certainly look at that. But that's really where, I suppose that's our main plea for this evening, Teresa, that we start to look at that. And we may not answer those questions this evening, but I'd be really grateful if folk can have a think about the best way that they would like to address that, and we'll certainly come back to future meetings if we can work around that in the future. That would be ideal. And the last point there, just you'd mentioned there just about how we support young people with additional support needs in the community. I think Leslie had obviously touched on some of that earlier on. Obviously, as I've mentioned, in terms of the difference between being a universal statutory service and other services within the wider partnership, we have a slightly different approach to that. So we do work quite closely with the statutory services like the schools to make sure that, as Leslie said earlier on, that we either work with young people or families in the school or within the local community where there's information that would be useful to guide that work. The schools are generally very good at passing that information on. So I can only speak on behalf of ourselves as a team, but where those partnerships can be built on, we're certainly happy to share our contacts and our links with the schools if some of that information could be spread more widely. And again, that's another example of where hopefully this board can kind of help us out in terms of some of those links and the best ways to do that.
Thank you. I've got Kirsty with her hand up. Do you want to ask a question?
Yes, I do. It's just a comment to Teresa, actually. For those of you that haven't met me before, I'm from Van Ale Voluntary Action, North Lanarkshire, and I know Teresa well. So it's just an offer there, Teresa, that, if you want us to be a link to the community and voluntary sector in North Lanarkshire and link you into the community and voluntary sector organisations more widely across North Lanarkshire, we'd be delighted to do that. So I can chat to you out with the meeting if there's anything that we can do to support that.
Thank you, Kirsty.
That's fine, Kirsty. I don't think that's what I was really getting at there, but yeah, I can still chat to you.
Thank you. Thank you, David, and your team, and we look forward to working with you as the year moves on. Can we move on to the next item, which is the Local Development Programme update, which I believe Matt is going to give us.
Thanks, Chair. Just a brief input regarding the report that was circulated. It provides information on the current local development programme for the Northern Corridor and updates where appropriate the status of specific projects. Community boards asked to acknowledge the status of the projects going forward and that further updates will be given to future boards. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
I have a question which is on behalf of the Auchinlock Community Council. There is a year one priority relating to an entrance feature, and in the programme it states that it is out to tender. However, the Auchinlock Community Council aren't actually up to speed or aware of exactly what's happening there.
Sorry, Chair. The designs will have been produced for that, and there should have been some consultation or local discussions in relation to the project going forward. I can find out more information on that and feed that back directly to the group.
I think it needs to be fed back to the Auchinlock Community Council.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Brandon.
Yeah. Plans for them.
Yeah, we'll check that out, find out what's happened there, but there should be information relating to that.
Okay. Anybody else with any points to raise for Matt on the development programme?
Carol and Isabel have got their hands up, Brandon.
Oh, Isabel, I didn't spot them.
Matt, just a query. I looked at the criteria for capital projects there, and it has to be in council land as part of the criteria. Does that mean that Gartcosh will never get any development money for any projects because there is no land in Gartcosh where you can actually put any capital projects down on any land in Gartcosh?
For us to undertake a project ourselves, Isabel, it has to be on council ground. There has been projects in the past where local groups have been involved in projects, and we have been, for example, a third party or a match funder for projects that have been taken forward, so have been able to negotiate and support projects in that way. So that might be something that we could consider. But in terms of us undertaking a capital project, we would only do that on council property.
That's quite concerning, because the capacity, the kind of community capacity, is very much dented, because there is no point in having a place plan when you haven't got a place to put anywhere. There's no point in putting a capital project forward, because the council wouldn't be able to fund it, and if it's a project worthwhile doing, we have taken over the only piece of ground in a participation request next to the village hall, where we worked with the council on that, and we've got a continuing participation request. We clean it up, we put flowers in it, we hold community events in it. We don't have any indoor space. We use a generator for power, we use a marquee for cover, etc. And we put on events there because that is the only space that is available. It's a postage stamp next to the shops, but you know, we're left in a situation where there is no land. Every piece of ground is taken up by developers. The council might own land in terms of maybe council tenancy. That is why you've got such an issue with the schools, or putting the school anywhere, and the cost that will be because of the amount the council has to pay for the land, or whatever deal it has to be done for it. But in terms of community capacity, there is no opportunity for us to do anything there. Is there any leeway in financial regulations that can facilitate communities like ours?
As I said, the criteria for the local development programme was laid out some time ago, and it's quite clear that we can't spend council funding on land that we don't own. It's just not possible for us to do that, to adhere to the financial regulations that you refer to. But there are things we would do to try and support groups who may own or lease or other properties, that we could see if there is any third party funding that we could support. I'm happy to have further discussions with you in relation to that.
Thank you.
Carol.
We're kind of in a similar situation to yourselves, Brandon. Mollinsburn entrance feature has actually been on the list for a few years now, ever since I went to the very first meeting that I ever went to for the local development projects. But our one has now, I mean, they wanted to give us a wall, so I would imagine you're probably getting a wall with Auchinloch put in it that somebody else has decided you're going to have. But they wanted to give us a wall, and we said no, because the state of Moodiesburn and the one for Muirhead and Christon, I mean, the back of them's fallen off. So I mean, they're not up to standard. So I wouldn't pay £13,000 for it. So you know, we try to speak to people, but the person who seems to make these decisions never gets back to you and never comes back to the community to discuss anything. So now, apparently, this person decided that they were going to put a different style of material on it. And I said no, because what the community have stated is that in the small village of Mollinsburn, which only has 49 houses, and the majority of them are, you know, people are even now taking rough casting off of them and taking them back to this bare stone. We wanted a dry stone wall built, which was far more in keeping with the village and the area, the boundaries between fields and things like that in the area. But now, because of this, because we stated what we actually wanted and finally got somebody to listen to us, suddenly it's been moved back to a year 2 because of it requires further consultation. Now, they seem to need architects and, you know, all the rest of it to build these walls. But I mean, if you ask a dry stone waller to come out and build you a dry stone wall, he doesn't require an architect to design it. He just builds you a wall. So I don't see why the council require to spend thousands of pounds on an architect of the councils to design a dry stone wall that if they just got a waller to come and do it, they wouldn't require that in the first place. To me, you're wasting money and all you're doing is putting money back into the council. You're allocating £13,000 to our project, and we're not going to see anything like £13,000 because so much of it is going to be taken up by architects and designers and all the rest of it for a dry stone wall that if you contact the West of Scotland Dry Stone Walling Association, they'll come and build it for you, no problem at all. I really don't see what the big issue is, but we've already been put off on this project for several years, and to be put off into year 2 again due to lack of consultation on the council's behalf with us, not further consultation required with, you know, due to anything we've done, I think it's absolutely ridiculous.
So again, Matt, is it possible you can get the appropriate people to contact Mollinsburn and actually go and speak with them to it's resolved?
Absolutely, Chair. And to be honest with you, and I will be quite honest with you, we have tried to do that. Carol, there has been an effort to contact you with members of the team to look at the design, to consider options for the design and to take it forward. We have tried to do that, and the communication hasn't been perhaps what it should have been in relation to that. But we're more than happy to discuss that with you further. It's not as straightforward as us phoning somebody up to come and build a wall. There is more to it than that. We do have to have designs that are drawn up. We do have people within the council who do that kind of work, and we do keep cost to a minimum of that so we can get as much as possible as we can for the project itself. So therefore there will be further discussions with you, and we'll move forward to getting a project that's wanted, that's based on local consultation and the needs and the desires of what a local community want. And it'd be good to see some representation in relation to that as what people would actually like to see. But we'll take those discussions forward with you and your organisation.
Can I ask when you've tried to contact our organisation that you've not been able to?
No, I'm not going to discuss that with you at this meeting, Carol. We'll happily get the team to discuss it with you off table, and I'll ask Gary to facilitate that.
Right, that's fine. Okay.
Thank you.
And finally, Isabel?
Just like to say as an example, there was £30,000 that had been allotted to gap cost for something like 4 years. And because there was no land to put it on, the project didn't go forward. We then looked at the criteria and wrote the proposal and the participation request. Because it's a public area, we can't take it on. We can't be responsible 24/7 for a kind of open green space. So it's a participation request. It's the first that North Lanarkshire Council had actually done. And the amount of money was £30,000, and £22,000 ended up getting spent because £8,000 was on architects' fees charged back to the in-house architects company. Now, what we got was gravel, which was the wrong gravel. It was supposed to be gravel cells so people could use wheelchairs. We got a lighting fitment, which was over £2,500, so we could get a Christmas tree put on. And we get a outside tap to water plants, which was charge of £800, and a container to put tools in. And basically that's what we got as a community for £30,000. So in terms of local development projects, I think anybody would view that as a fairly meek application of that amount of money when the council is fairly strapped for cash. So if you're lucky enough and you've got some land and you can get a project done within your community, I would ask you to look very, very closely at the project costs that are getting charged back, because it really is extortionate. You know, for have that amount of planning for some gravel, a tap and a socket, and to be charged £8,000 out of that money. Now, we didn't have the money, we didn't get the money. The council were spending it on our behalf. They were using the contractors, and the money just goes. And you know, £800 for a tap that will work outside just blows my mind. So if you are engaging in projects, I would say question the costs, because we found that really, really expensive, and we really couldn't find a justification for it. We were disappointed.
Okay. Can we move on now to Gary?
Chair, can I come back in just for a second, just to respond to that point?
Yes.
Just to reassure the community board that I can guarantee that we spend a lot of time monitoring the costs of projects, and we do seek to get best value for every project that we undertake. We tender projects, we go out to a number of bidders for what we're trying to undertake, and we will try and deliver projects as cost effectively as possible. So it's just to give that assurance going forward.
Matt, we had one criteria there, and that was like, if disabled people went into the square, they would be able to take a wheelchair across it. And you know, Gary will tell you they get the grade of the stones wrong, and because it was during COVID, it was left too late, and it's something that people can actually go into with a wheelchair, and that was the whole point of it. So things like that do happen, and you're now looking at delivering 2 bags of chips this month or next month, so that we can fill in the gravel that's been lost with kids kicking it and whatever, because it was supposed to be like car park type grating that allowed wheelchairs and disabled people to go into the area. And you put the wrong grader, chips down. That defeated the whole purpose.
Okay. Obviously, Matt is going to get members of his team to contact the various communities to bring them up to speed with what's happening in their areas. And obviously someone needs to get back to Isabel with what the remedials may be on her particular project. Thank you, Matt. Gary, you're going to give us a LOIP update.
Yes, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I just want to give a very quick update in regard to the work for the local outcome improvement plans. As you will recall from the last community board meeting, we agreed to convene meetings with those interested in being involved in the subgroups. I'm happy to report that we had an initial meeting of those interested on February the 8th of this year, and we have been able to start our conversations on potential for moving things forward in a positive direction. First of all, though, before I say anything more, I would like to comment that we did receive a number of apologies for that meeting. So we only had about half the amount of people at the meeting itself. So we'd be very delighted for consideration of the community board members to, to be involved in the local subgroups going forward. In terms of the initial discussions, we have discussed the merits of different options, and we concluded that consideration should be given to a hybrid model, a model that will involve some of the priorities being led by relevant local organisations or collective of organisations, or indeed potentially subgroups being convened for certain priorities. We haven't concluded the exact way forward, but we have agreed that we do need to do a little bit more work to establish some more information and data in order to try and get things moving in the right direction. But what I would say is that we certainly feel that we have got an opportunity here to, without taking too much more time, to get things moving, to try and do our best to get things right. On the back of feedback from those members that participated within the meeting, we have agreed a number of actions that will be concluded within the next 2 to 3 weeks, and we have confirmed that we will look to have a follow-up meeting with those members and indeed anyone else who was unable to attend the initial meeting. But just for clarity, we have agreed, in order to try and take things forward, that we would look at doing a quick mapping exercise of the priorities and of all the groups and organisations who potentially could contribute to that. We did make a start of that on the night at the meeting, but we will take that forward and try to get some real robust information about that. We have also agreed that going forward that we would complete a community profile for Moodiesburn with a focus on Moodiesburn West, on the basis that Moodiesburn West is a priority area for Northern Corridor and a priority within the local outcome improvement plan itself. We've also agreed that we would go and look back at previous consultation work, surveys, etc., and extract from that information of any local person who participated, who potentially expressed an interest in being further involved going forward. So we committed to all of those tasks, and we will ensure that that's completed within the next 2 to 3 weeks with a further meeting convened to take things forward. Just like to finally add a comment about Moodiesburn area. As you may be aware, that there's some news that potentially involves a local organisation no longer operating. And if this being the case, we would be very keen to look at working with the local community in Moodiesburn and the Coalfield Regeneration Trust to establish another new anchor organisation, potentially to help lead on the existing Moodiesburn community action plan that's been produced for that area. But we're at an early stage in the discussions there, and we will keep you informed about it. And sorry, one other point, just to refer back to David's presentation in terms of the CLD inputs and the questions that were asked by board members. I would like to say that I've also had conversations with other CLD managers, including Ellen Rafferty for lifelong learning, adult learning, and June Ford for youth work. And with a combination of all relevant CLD managers, there is an absolute commitment for the CLD service to be involved in the local LOIP subgroups going forward. Thank you very much.
So obviously David and his team, for instance, could be involved in the LOIP focus on children and young people then?
Yes, that would be right, Brandon. The identified person from the team is still to be confirmed, but that will be forthcoming.
Any other questions for Gary? Okay. Ros, you have a community board self-evaluation.
Yes, the first of a few little bits of joy I have for you tonight. So obviously community board self-assessment, we'll start with that if that's okay. As part of the governance for community planning, it was recommended by Audit Scotland that self-evaluation for local community planning and community empowerment should be undertaken. The Improvement Service have, due to their development role, shown an interest in working with the boards around self-evaluation at some points this year, and they could potentially want to start to discuss the process in the coming months and potentially before the summer. Further discussions will take place with the boards as more information becomes available relating to the proposed approach and the format of the process. But given the timing of the board meetings and the upcoming election period, we just wanted to ensure that the boards are aware before any approach by council or the Improvement Service. So it was just to give you a head up that there's a potential to be involved in this as we go through in the next few months. But we'll keep you updated on that. Are there any questions around that?
Be a way of measuring our effectiveness in delivering to the community?
Well, this is, I think it will help, you know, to look at what the picture is, and obviously, and there's always learning from these things. So I think it's quite an important thing to do, you know, and obviously it's been recommended by Audit Scotland, you know, for this kind of self-evaluation to be taken. I think as we move, you know, as part of the local community planning agenda, you know, so, and community empowerment, of course, as part of that. So, are we okay with that? Will I move on to the next community?
Anybody else with any questions for Ros on that? Isabel.
Oh, Isabel and Alice.
Will this be in the form of a questionnaire for each board member, etc.?
Not sure, Isabel, exactly what that format's going to look yet, but certainly it will be, as I say, coming through as part of the Improvement Service. So you will be you will keep you informed of as this process is developing, and what that can look like, or should look like.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Alice? You're struggling with your mute, Alice.
Thank
There
you,
you are.
Brandon. No, perhaps Isabel asked my question, Ros, when you said it was self-evaluation. I wondered who the self is. Is it the council self? Is it myself? Is it yourself? Who is the self here? But that will probably be revealed at some point in the future.
It will be, yes. I suspect it may be all of ourselves. Will I move on then to the community concordat and a bit more details about that? So, the Council and the Community Permit Committee on Monday, 31st of January, approved a proposal for Van Ale, and Kirsty's here, she'll be aware, to lead with local community organisations and stakeholder and community engagement with the aim of developing a community concordat or agreement. Same thing. The idea is that that building on engagement with communities to date through the development of the LOIPs, there will be a focus on equalities groups and seldom heard voices to inform an agreement between community planning partners and local communities, and around how we will work together and agree expectations and standards across the partnership to support the delivery of the LOIPs. Building on previous discussions with partners, there is a report, and I can put the link to the MARS, which we have, which is Minutes, Agenda and Reports section on the council website, and you can go in there and you can find the report that provides an overview of the proposed North Lanarkshire approach and is linked to ongoing actions to ensure the development of the partnership approach for the delivery of the LOIPs and support the development of the community boards. Van Ale will work closely with partners and communities to engage, develop and implement this in the coming weeks and months. Okay, and again, if there's any problem with people accessing the report, just let me know and I can send a copy. I can email a copy over to people, or we can do that as part of the minutes of the meeting, if you like.
Yes, please. And my comment to start this ball rolling is, surely this concordat is really the terms of reference for the group.
Well, I think it's about how we agree the partnership working going forward. So yeah, maybe there'll be parts within that. I'm not sure because I haven't actually had time to read the report yet before I've come to you.
Maybe you should read the terms of reference and see how it talks about the representation and how we're meant to be working together.
Yep. Well, I'm sure Van Ale and Kirsty will be obviously looking at that going forward, as part of this process. Yep.
Anybody else?
Brandon, can I just come in to say, just further to what Ros was saying there, it was Maddie Halliday, our CEO, that pulled the Concordat together, and it was approved at committee. And I know that there was work done internally at the council as well to get the document where it needed to be. But it does differ slightly from the terms and reference, because it doesn't just talk about membership. It lays out exactly how the different partners will work together. So it goes into a little bit more detail than just a terms of reference. So it does differ slightly. But once you see the document itself, that should be quite clear.
It just seems to me as we've got some duplication of effort here.
A little bit of a slight overlap there. I do agree with you, but it does go into a little bit more detail. But I'll not say any more than that until people get sight of the Concordat itself.
Well, we look forward to seeing it. Carol.
Dare I say duplication and internal expenditure of funding again.
Thank you, Carol. We'll move on. Petition.
Okay. Well, I've still got some more. I've got a couple other bits that I could add in, if you like, around which had just come kind of in last minute, and one's about the Queen's Jubilee, and one's about green space participatory budgeting. So if you would like me to do it now, I could do that, or if you would rather I left it TOCB, it's up to you. What would you prefer, Chair?
Well,
I'm happy to do it now, and that's it.
Do it now, yes. So
Yeah,
Queen's
is that
Jubilee.
okay? Okay, so the Queen's Jubilee. The Council is supporting the celebration of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, when she becomes the first British monarch to celebrate a Platinum Jubilee after 70 years service. There's a number of official events that are arranged, and others have been set up to encourage members of the public to participate. And the Council is also planning its own celebrations, of which the dates are still to be discussed. Obviously, there's a bank holiday weekend of celebrations will take place between the 2nd and the 6th of June this year as part of that. And as part of the Council celebrations, a fund is being set up, which will allow community groups and individuals to apply for grants through the community boards to celebrate the occasion. The details of this fund is still being arranged, but we wanted to make the community boards aware prior to the announcement, so that you can maybe start to have a think about if there was anything particular in the area. As I say, we will get information out to you.
Bearing in mind that the Jubilee weekend is in June, and our next meeting is not planned until May, how are we going to get all this stuff in place?
We will send information, but we will as soon as we have the details of the funding that's available and the criteria, we will get that out to everyone, so that people are able to start to think about it. But I would suggest you start thinking about now maybe some things that you might want to do in your local community, which you think would be a nice way to celebrate this occasion.
Chair, can I come in very briefly on that before Ross goes to our
already
next
been
point?
thinking about it. Matt, you were saying?
Yeah, just very briefly, Chair, in terms of once we identify the amount of funding that's available, we will put that out to all the community boards, and there'll be a grant application that will go out, similar to done through the Recovery NL and the CVS digital fund, etc. That groups have applied for funding. There'll be a grant application form will come out with details of the kind of activities that would be funded, and then applications can be made. They'll be assessed between ourselves and colleagues in Voluntary Action North Lanarkshire, and then we can report back to the community boards as to which groups have been funded. So it's not intentionally wait until the next round of meetings before we process this. This will be done as soon as we identify the funding that's available. We'll start to get the information out to local community groups to make applications.
Thank you. Because obviously, by the time we meet in May, this should already be well and truly in train, because we can't be making decisions on this in May for something that's going to happen in June. Ros?
Carol's got her hand up, so I'm not sure if...
I think it's the background you've got, Carol. Your hand is very, very indistinct. But Carol.
Thanks, Chair. I was just going to make the comment that these kind of things are something that maybe only some people could get to, or some people would be involved. Perhaps if they used the money that would benefit everybody, they could cut the grass instead.
Maybe some people would appreciate that. Maybe some people wouldn't.
My comment, Carol, is that I think some communities are already looking at what they would be doing for the Jubilee. So they would welcome the opportunity to apply for some funding.
They're probably doing something anyway. They've probably got something organised anyway. Whereas this is something that, would benefit everybody, rather than just the select few or people who are in areas that there is actually an event on, or have transport or public transport to go to an event.
Any response to that, Ros?
Not really. All I would say is I think communities decide for themselves what they want to do and what they don't want to do. And if they see they might want to do something but not think they've got the money to do it. But if we're able to offer a little bit of money towards that, they may then decide to do something which could maybe cheer up a street or some families, or make a place look a little better, to plant trees, or to do something that might just for them make a difference. But so I think, for some people, cutting the grass could be important, Carol, but for other people, they might not even have grass round about them, so it might not be important. It might be important for their children to do something, or for them to celebrate in another way. It's difficult to know. It's all valid, Oh.
Certainly, I think of it as an opportunity to encourage community spirit and have a big street party.
Like that, Brandon. Okay, well, I carry on to my final
You
piece.
want another one?
Oh, yeah. I'll just keep giving, you see.
It's not on my list.
So this is about green space participatory budgeting, or PB for us in the know now. The council are interested in finding out what projects local communities would think would help nature recover. We intend to spend about £50,000 on practical improvements across North Lanarkshire area in 2022-23. Claire, ears up. Local communities will be invited to suggest the improvements they would like to see. This could be general areas for more work like planting more wildflowers to help bees thrive, or specific improvements like putting up more bird boxes. All suggestions must relate to land which NLC own and operate and directly help nature recover. The suggestions will be checked out.
Claire has put her hand up straight away.
The suggestions will be checked out to make sure they are practical by trained ecologists and council staff. Then all the suitable projects will be brought back to you and your community to vote on. Everyone will be encouraged to make their voice heard and decide which improvements they want to see happen in the local area. The winning projects will be delivered by NLC staff, and there are likely to be opportunities for people to volunteer and get involved on the ground. When participatory budget exercise is launched next financial year, we would appreciate your help in spreading the word so the maximum number of people hear about it. If you've got any questions in the meantime, please contact us at greenspace@northland.gov.uk and put the words nature recovery in the email subject. And I can put that in the chat box tonight so that you can have that information.
In the minutes.
Okay.
Ros, I think you pointed out that this again needs to be on NLC land, which
yes.
I'm afraid we have a very, sort of a bit of a shortage of. Claire.
I think probably by this point, any remaining pieces of NLC land in the Northern Corridor we've already had or are already in partnership with the Green Space team in improving. So we've obviously had funding from various sources to create wildflower meadows. It's ongoing work. We've got new woodland creation, etc. It would be really nice if there was better partnership working between, for instance, the biodiversity teams, the green space team on the ground. It's great. We get to meet them all the time and they're fantastic. But those higher up people that we've never ever met, it would be really nice if they came out and engaged and spoke to communities about what's possible, what's sensible. It's really difficult for green space. We've got several projects on the ground. You plant a wildflower meadow and nobody tells the guy that cuts the grass, so he just cuts the wildflower meadow. You can't just throw money at things. You need to have better organisation, I guess is my point.
Okay.
So hopefully that happens.
I'm going back to Isabel's point about ownership. You're urging, North Lanarkshire Council are urging people to take ownership of buildings and land. Now we own the template our community centres on. We lease a piece of land and we own another piece of land, which can all have some work done, by green space. We could be planting, we did plant a wild meadow and yes, it did get cut, Claire, round about the loch. So that's no longer. So if this is only going to be in council land, how are you going to support the organisations that have actually taken ownership of land and taken ownership of buildings within the communities? And we're experiencing this more and more and more. And we certainly experienced it with a charger. When we had a feasibility study done in Glenboig for a charger for our electric cars, and we're the only community in North Lanarkshire that don't have a charger because we own the community centre, and the only place possible to have a charger installed in Glenboig was in the community centre car park. That's what the feasibility showed. We're taking ownership, we're going forward with our communities, we're regenerating our communities, we're bringing our own funding in for the communities, and when something like this comes up, we're actually being crucified, basically. So I would like something to be taken back somewhere to give support to actually the organisations that are moving forward in their communities and regenerating, with funding, I may add, from the lottery, from Robertson's Trust, from any other funder out there apart from North Lanarkshire Council. I'm really quite miffed about this, to be honest with you. We've got a lot of green space that we could be getting support with this funding, and we own every piece of land that we would be looking for support on. I'd like something took back to see how you can support us on this.
Okay. I've made notes on that.
You've put your hand up again.
It's just a thing. I mean, we are, because Glenboig are really active over there, and we're quite active everywhere. I'm sure there's all groups in all the villages who would like to come together and talk about what's best to do in the Northern Corridor. You know, I think we quite enjoy when this funding comes out, if somebody could come to one of our meetings, whether it's the forum or the community board, and actually hear a kind of view from everybody. I'm slightly concerned that some of the work where we've already got external funding in, you could have then somebody say, we've spent thousands and thousands of pounds creating a wildflower meadow. Somebody else decides they want something else there. It needs to be coordinated, sort of thing. Rather than it being the result of a participatory budgeting process, I think it needs to be better coordinated than that.
Okay. I'll take a note of these your comments, Claire and Teresa, and we'll certainly we'll take that back. Matt, I'm sure we can have further discussion on that.
I think, Chair, I think, Rose, is there not a contact detail you've there that if anybody's got
There is an email.
queries, they can make sure that these are fed back to the team that's leading on this, and we can get further information.
Yeah, I'll put the contact email in the chat bar that people can make contact to as well.
Thank you, Rose. I'm going to try again for petitions.
Thank you.
I'm not aware of any.
There's no petitions, Chair.
No petitions. And reports from the community planning partners. Brian, for Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. I can see, Brian. You're on mute, Brian.
My report was submitted to all the partners by Gary Stark, so if anybody has any questions on that, I'm quite happy to take them. Other than
Everybody
that,
got the report, yes?
Yeah, it was circulated prior to the meeting, so that
Yes.
we didn't have to speak to it at this point. So, the other updates I've got is that our youth volunteer scheme, which is going to be based at Coatbridge Fire Station, should be up and running by April, the start of the new financial year. So we'll be advertising for youth volunteers very soon, probably be communicated in the next month or so. Our Fire Reach programme as well, we've recruited 3 facilitators, and that will be up and running at the start of April as well. And we'll be looking for nominations from community groups and the education department. There is also a recruitment day at Steps Retained Station, which will be taking place on the 7th of March, as we've had 5 resignations and people getting promoted within the unit, so we're quite short on staff. So I've communicated it on quite a lot of the social media sites round about the Northern Corridor. So we're opening a open recruitment day, 7th of March at 6:30. If anybody knows anyone who'd be interested in joining the unit. That's it. That's basically my report.
Thank you, Brian. And as you said, your report was circulated ahead of the meeting. Anybody, any queries on the report that was circulated? Carol?
It's not so much a query. I just wanted to say thank you very much for such a professional report. It was very easy to understand in reading it to the lay person, and it gave all the information that was required in it, and it was good to look at as well. So thank you very much.
No bother. Thanks very much. I'd just like to add as well, we're interested in obviously the LOIP. So any activities that you're planning for Moodiesburn West, well, right through the Northern Corridor, but especially Moodiesburn West, if you can communicate them to us, any community events, we can arrange either our community action team or the local crews to participate. If you just drop me an email and let me know what's happening. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Susan for Police Scotland.
Hi, Chair. Thank you. Apologies, I haven't submitted a report. However, I will try and endeavour to do that next time. I do have a Rose has just shared. I'm happy to kind of cover that just now and then do my kind of update afterward, if that's okay. Sorry, Chair, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you fine, Susan.
Okay, I'll just go ahead with the presentation since it's sort of up on the screen. If in order, Chair, I'll just kind of run through a presentation which has been prepared by one of my colleagues. And it's to provide the group with some information in relation to Operation Motox and support or sort of kind of bid for support for funding that we are submitting through the local community boards. So to say, Operation Motox, it is an operation which commenced in July 2021 in partnership with North Lanarkshire Council, and it was our response to offending and antisocial behaviour involving off-road motorcycles and quad bikes. Rose, could you just skip on to slide 3, please? The next one, sorry, please. So the background, obviously, to the operation was it was formed in response to rising antisocial behaviour incidents involving off-road bikes, quad bikes, etc., and incidents which had led to the loss of life and serious injury. And in order to address the danger to the public, and as a response, and obviously in response to the use of these bikes, this operation was formed. Sorry, Rose, on to the next slide, please. Okay, I'm sorry. So, as part of Operation Motox, which was formed in July 2021, officers were given dedicated time to patrol locations and provide reassurance. We had been successful in receiving funding to fund 2 off-road motorbikes, kind of dirt bikes, as I kind of referred to them as. And officers were utilised these bikes to provide general reassurance in the area, as well as educations to persons that were identified through the use of these bikes as using quad bikes and off-road bikes illegally. And these were used to address linked incidents such as youth disorder. So North Lanarkshire Council, along with Police Scotland, so want to carry out meaningful engagement with our communities to better understand the needs of people looking for direction on how to use the bikes legally and to target offenders robustly. And this approach requires community boards to be at the heart of Moto-X as it continues forward. So as I say, this presentation has been prepared by one of my colleagues, just to kind of run you through some of the benefits that we've found from the Operation Moto-X, and again, gain community boards support for funding for the purchase of what is proposed for quad bikes. Rose, could you just please skip on to slide 6, which is the one with the, yes, that one, thank you. So this slide just sort of provides some figures in relation to the sort of benefits that's been seen through the Moto-X operation. So Police Scotland, in collaboration with North Lanarkshire Council, are looking to enhance our policing response to antisocial behaviour. And this is to highlight the issues of antisocial behaviour on off-road motorcycles and quad bikes. And the analytical report below has been prepared, which just shows some of the key sort of figures, which are prior to us securing the funding for the 2 off-road bikes, prior to Moto-X was formed, and thereafter. So just really to kind of quickly highlight, for the area of Motherwell, Wishaw, Bellshill and Shotts, prior to the Moto-X operation being formed, there was 342 incidents relating to the use of off-road bikes and associated antisocial behaviour. And then following the introduction of Moto-X, that went down to 184, which was a 46.2% reduction. And then for our area, the Northern Corridor area, Cumbernauld side, Airdrie and Coatbridge, those figures prior to the operation were 298 and then reduced to 120 after the operation, so 57% reduction, so quite significantly reduced call demand in relation to antisocial behaviour linked to these incidents following the use of the kind of 2 off-road bikes. So as I say, as can be seen from the figures, the use of the off-road bikes that we secured through Operation Motor X has seen an overall reduction in antisocial behaviour related incidents involving motorcycles and quad bikes by 51.3%. And this means that during 2021, officers made an impact through education and enforcement, which resulted in incidents recorded reducing from 640 to 312. So quite a significant amount there. Rose, if you could just skip on to the next slide, please. Issues arising, that's great, thank you. So at the minute we have, as I say, 2 off-road motorcycles which we utilise across the north of the division. However, there are limitations with those bikes, particularly during the winter months, just for officer safety. And what we have noticed is that during the periods when we're not actively using the bikes, the antisocial calls connected to the use of quad bikes, off-road bikes, begin to rise. And the table there just sort of displays the figures, which I'll just kind of let you review yourself. So to help us respond to the antisocial incidents involving these kind of off-road bikes, quad bikes, again, we're seeking the support of the local community boards across the north for the purchase of 4 quad bikes. The quad bikes require significantly less training than the off-road bikes do. And it means if we purchase the quad bikes, we can actually get more officers trained in the use of these. We actually have kind of in-house trainers that can do that. And the equipment to go with the quad bike is much less than it is for the off-road bikes. So on to the funding proposal. So to date we have secured funding of £10,000 from Scotland Love's local fund, and this was my predecessor Neil MacLeod that had managed to secure that funding for a local bid for kind of quad bikes for this sort of area. However, to supplement this, myself and my other 3 community policing inspector colleagues from the north side of the division are submitting a proposal to our local community boards, again to purchase a kind of 4 quad bikes, the equipment and associated running costs that go with these. This will provide North Lanarkshire with an additional 4 quad bikes on top of the 2 existing motorcycles that we already have for officers to continue to target antisocial behaviour within the community across North Lanarkshire. Thank you. So, Police Scotland and North Lanarkshire's commitment through Motor X, and which will continue and obviously expand if we're successful in the bidding application. Police will continue to support the training of additional officers to use quad bikes. Officers will conduct joint operations with North Lanarkshire to appropriately target offenders and provide reassurance and education to the community. We will continue to link in with community boards and North Lanarkshire Council Office to highlight areas of concern for action plans to be created. And this will include looking at problem areas, creating problem profiles and altering the landscape where required. And officers will continue to engage in partnership activities to detect antisocial behaviour by working alongside our colleagues in housing and antisocial teams. Again, that's really just to kind of pinpoint hotspot locations for directed patrols, etc. Rose, if you can just sort of skip forward on the last slide, please. So in summary, what we have seen through the launch of Operation Motor X and the sort of use of these 2 kind of off-road bikes that we have there, and what we hope to see being developed and expanded on if our bidding fund is successful, is we have increased capability to access areas where normal police vehicles can't get to. There has been a significant reduction in youth-related antisocial behaviour connected to the use of these sort of vehicles, and we would hope that with the additional kind of purchase of 4 vehicles, we can actively target any kind of calls, particularly kind of coming into the better weather. The increase in having kind of the additional vehicles will increase our capacity for joint cross-border operations to tackle the use of these illegal motorbikes. And as part of Operation Motorbikes, there has been a number of seizures of these vehicles. There has been increased educational campaigns to raise awareness of the dangers of the use of these illegal bikes, and that's something that will be continued throughout the operation. And one of the other things which we've found to be really beneficial is that these bikes have actually been utilised previously to assist in the search for like high-risk missing people, again, where our police vehicles can't actually access. So, as well as all the kind of benefits to having the 2 vehicles that we have just now, we believe that the purchase of the additional 4 quad bikes will increase our operational capacity to tackle incidents of antisocial behaviour and safeguard the public from the associated risk that goes along with the use of these vehicles on the road. And that's the end of the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions if there is any, but as I say, that's submitted just for information of the board in consideration of providing support to purchase these additional vehicles.
Thank you, Susan. I'm sure the board can offer its support. I must admit, I live on the very fringe of the area, and I don't see much quad bike activity. How much of this activity is actually taking place in the Northern Corridor area?
So certainly for kind of Northern Corridor, we tend to see a spike in these calls, particularly kind of in the better weather. But certainly for the kind of Northern Corridor area, the sort of hotspots tend to be the Mount Ellen Golf Course and Hollowfield Crescent. We seem to kind of get quite a spike in calls in those specific areas.
Right. Claire?
Just to say it, I think it's a great programme and it really will cut down on antisocial behaviour. And it's great that you've got the funding from Scotland Loves Local. I actually noticed that's a 5-year rolling programme, so it's just to ask if you're going to be applying for further funding for the resources to continue the project.
So the initial funding request will include obviously the kind of initial outlay for the vehicles, and thereafter a kind of maintenance contract will be included in those. So, you know, given that if we're successful, the 4 quad bikes along with the 2 off-road bikes that we have will be utilised throughout the north, and certainly kind of going forward in the kind of near future there won't be any need to buy any additional. It would just be kind of general maintenance, but as I say, that's kind of incorporated in the funding request.
So I suppose my question was, are you planning to apply to further rounds of the Scotland Loves Local funding?
No, sorry. That kind of funding is capped at the £10,000, which Neil MacLeod has secured. So the funding bid to supplement that is through the boards.
Thank you.
When you say the funding bid is through the boards, Matt may help me here. The boards don't have any money.
Hi, Chair. No, the board themselves don't have any budget in that regard, but we have funding through the local development programme, which has got an element which has been approved through the Community Empowerment Committee to support partnership working. So that there is an element of that funding that we could consider in conjunction with Police Scotland to support that project across the 9 boards. So there is a bit of potential for accessing funding through that route, and that is something we would certainly consider. But the presentation that Susan's put in tonight demonstrates the potential value of that going forward.
Okay, I'm just trying to see where we move this on to be able to support Susan and her need.
I think there's a general consensus that there is support from this board to take that forward, then that's a week of further discussions with the police in relation to that.
Right.
But
Okay.
this will be presented to all the community boards in this cycle.
Okay. Isabel?
I have to confess, Susan, I really didn't know this was a thing. You know, and I couldn't actually tell you what would be illegal or not legal, or legal regarding quad bikes or using these types of things. Just your data. I would say obviously this is an uptake by, you know, predominantly young people. So in that you've had a reduction, do you not think the fact that they've been back to college, they've been back to school, would actually also contribute to a reduction in this, as opposed to it being all down to having 2 bikes? I would think, you know, youngsters might have been partaking in this activity out of sheer boredom, or thinking they were out in, you know, they were out in green fields and they weren't doing anything particularly wrong in what they were doing. But it might be that, you know, the fact that the statistics are better than maybe what we should suggest in that young people's time for either hobbies and B school has increased through COVID. That might have made an impact on some of the data as well. Or is that already being considered and I'm being a bit unrealistic, or I'm not being as fair maybe with the data that you've actually given out?
Thank you, Isabel. So yeah, that's just a kind of snapshot of data that we obviously just kind of used the kind of, I suppose, a 6 months review period. This is not a new problem for kind of local areas or for the police. These are kind of long-standing sort of patterns of behaviour, really. So yeah, I mean, certainly, you know, the kind of reduction may have accounted for the fact that the kids have maybe kind of gone back to school, some things have kind of been reopened, but I say that's just for that kind of specific time period. You know, if we had to go back a further 6 months beyond that, you know, I'm more than kind of confident that we would have the same kind of volume of calls, because this is something that, you know, kind of happens routinely and is routinely fed through to the police as a kind of complaint. You know, and it's at all times, day and night, you know, particularly kind of weekends and the evenings. These incidents are actually kind of occurring as opposed to during the day when the kids are at school.
I've got three people queuing up.
Thank you.
Teresa?
Apologies, no mouse. Thanks very much for that presentation. I can tell you, Susan, that we'll welcome that in Glenboy, because we experience off the road bikes going round our community quite a lot as the better weather comes in. And you know, it's mostly young men that actually aren't at school in our community, Isabel, that we really experience. And it's said for the grace of God that we haven't had a serious accident down in our park with some of these young people on these bikes. So I certainly would support a programme like that. It's been a long time coming, and I think the more vehicles you've got, the better. You'll be able to reach a lot more communities that way. So it's a great programme.
Thank you for your support, Teresa.
Okay, Andrew, and then it'll be Carol.
Yeah, just echo that. I fully support it. It's an ongoing problem, and it's something we need. And it's not so much, I'm not so hung up about the chasing quad bikes and chasing other motorbikes. It's actually getting into places very quickly that normally police officers can't get to, which I think there's a lot of added value with this as well, which will disrupt other elements, antisocial behaviour as well. So I think it's an excellent programme.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, that's certainly something that we have found to be very useful. We have deployed the bikes on a number of occasions and been successful in the kind of searches for missing people. You know, particularly kind of rough terrain and stuff where we could just never kind of get, or our access would, you know, would be on foot and would be at a much slower pace. So they are very beneficial for those types of things as well.
Carol.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to say that I actually work in Motherwell, and I witness quite a lot of off-road bikes and quad bikes being used in this manner pretty much on a daily basis in housing schemes and things like that. And quite often I would probably say the average age is about 30 or 40, not just young people. So don't get me wrong, there are young ones, but quite often it's older men that are on these bikes as well. And I did actually one time see the 2 police officers on the bikes in Motherwell, and I actually smiled to myself. I thought, oh well, there they go. So, because they were actually just round the corner from 2 that were misbehaving. So I actually think it would be a great you know, it's a great thing, even just them being out, you know, as a deterrent, you know, not necessarily catching people, but just being out as a deterrent, you know, in the first place, I think would be really good. But also, as you say, for the aspect of being able to get to places that, you know, other police vehicles can't get to, or, you know, missing people, things like that. You know, I think it's great, and I fully support it.
Thank you for that, Carol.
Thank you for your report, Susan, and we look forward to supporting you going forwards.
Chair, I actually have obviously I didn't kind of submit a written report. If there's enough time, I can kind of quickly run through for some figures for the kind of last reporting period, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Okay. So I'll just I'm conscious of time, so I'll kind of quickly run through these. So for the Ward 5 area, since the last reporting period, so I've kind of done search from the 30th of November until today's date, there has been 92 crime reports recorded. From them, no incidents of serious violence. From these crimes, there have, however, been 5 thefts of motor vehicles and 3 thefts from a motor vehicle. We do seem to there was a space at a point within Ward 5 and Ward 6 where we were being quite kind of heavily affected by acquisitive crime. So we have a dedicated kind of crime team here, plainclothes unit, who review and take on the majority of our acquisitive crime reports. So they've taken ownership of the incidents out in the kind of Ward 5 and Ward 6 area. And as a result of that, there was a 26-year-old male from the Glasgow area, and he was identified as being responsible for a series of these incidents and arrested and charged and remanded in custody for that. So moving on to kind of for specifics for Ward 6, 117 crime reports raised. From these, there was 1 incident of serious violence in the Moodiesburn area, which resulted in a 30-year-old male sustaining a hand injury following a disturbance at his home address involving 3 other males. And those 3 other males, aged 23, 33 and 27, were arrested. In a linked incident to that incident, there was a 30-year-old male found in possession of over 1 kilo of herbal cannabis and was arrested and reported to the Procurator Fiscal. And also within those 117 crime reports, again, there has been incidents of theft from motor vehicles, thefts of vehicles, but again, our kind of local plainclothes team have picked up those inquiries and they're kind of running with those. We actually have a 2-week initiative running at the moment, where the plainclothes team, supported by our traffic department, are doing kind of targeted acquisitive crime patrols within the kind of Ward 5 and Ward 6 areas. So that's sort of plainclothes patrols, uniformed patrols, and various kind of vehicle point kind of stop checks. So just a couple of things going forward. So obviously, kind of from the action log, my action was to kind of introduce you to our local ward officers, who are PC Robbie Lake and John Fleming. I know they have kind of been out and spoken to a number of the kind of groups. So one of the things that was picked up through the kind of conversations that the officers were having was some of the groups would like a local subjury within specific areas. So John and Robbie have identified premises in the kind of Garfield, Eden Nicholson Centre, and we're just kind of working on a premise for the Glenboig area and plan to hold bi-monthly surgeries, which will be kind of advertised for members of the public to pop along and have conversations with the team and raise any concerns that they have. So we're hoping to get them up and running in the near future. Again, the officers have been doing a bit of work around about a kind of specific parking complaint in the Mollinsburn area. So we've been working with our colleagues in roads and planning. Had a multi-agency meeting a few weeks ago. There's been some educational visits carried out to business premises in that area, and we've got another kind of multi-agency meeting scheduled in a few weeks prior to taking on enforcement action. For that, we're in early talks, the officers are in early talks with Christna High School to utilise the pitches there for a kind of community football event. And again, that's to sort of try and provide a diversionary tactic for the youths in the area. And following a few incidents of antisocial behaviour where one of the sort of local service buses is targeted and stones and things were being stones and were being thrown out the windows. There has been a number of educational inputs provided by our Safer Communities officer to second and third year within Christna High School, and they are now engaging with the teachers there and have a programme of educational inputs which will kind of go on throughout the year. And that's it from me, if anybody has any questions.
Thank you for that report, Susan. Yes, it's good to hear that your team is engaging with the local communities, and the surgeries, I think, will be very welcome.
Yeah, I think that'll hopefully kind of be a very positive addition to their engagement with the local communities. And the idea really is just to kind of provide an informal setting for members of the public to raise any concerns that they have. Yes.
We'll move on. I think NHS Scotland NHS Lanarkshire gave their presentation earlier on because we had those questions that we wanted to put to them. So it's Van El.
Thanks, Chair. You'll be pleased to hear that I only have one brief update for board members. So Van El has recently set up a community lottery, and that's due to go live next month. So we're currently looking for community and voluntary sector organisations to put themselves forward to become a good cause, and that's to benefit from the ticket sale money, sorry. So the organisations need to operate in North Lanarkshire, and they need to have a turnover of less than £100,000 to be eligible to be a good cause. The groups would then encourage the local residents, people within their groups, other interested parties, etc., to sign up and actually buy tickets, and then individuals can then support the groups within their own area, and also potentially win the weekly jackpot of £25,000. So that's always a win-win scenario there as well. So what I plan to do is just put the link to the dedicated website in the chat, and that should provide some more information in the meantime. So hopefully that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the community lottery. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Kirsty. And of course, hopefully that information will be circulated in the minutes, the notes of the meeting as well. Anne.
Hi, Chair. Apologies for being late earlier. For some reason, I couldn't get on. I think my NHS Lanarkshire firewall wouldn't allow me onto WebEx, so I had to find other ways to get on. So, as you know, I'm here actually taking the note of today as well, so I'll most certainly make sure that all the links are put on to the notes as well. But it was just briefly to say that there is a health improvement update which had been sent just today to Gary for information. However, I will make sure that that health improvement update is added to the minutes as well. And for that, if there's any more information needed around any of the things that's on that update, for any community groups to get involved in any of the work that's going on via the health improvement team, it would be through Gabby Mitas, and her email will be on the update anyway. So I would encourage people who want to get involved in some of the projects and initiatives, if they're interested in that particular topic, to connect with Gabby. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Anne. It would be useful if this information was able to come out ahead of the
Yeah,
meeting.
I appreciate that, Brandon. That will be in the future. That's just been a delay with people being off. So it'll certainly come out earlier to be included in the agenda.
Thank you. Any other business? Carol.
I'm not sure which of the NHS staff it would go to, but I've had a couple of instances where we've gone for the vaccination, the COVID vaccinations, to the link in Cumbernauld. Now, my son, who's 16, we phoned because he got refused his second vaccination. He then caught COVID, so then had to wait 12 weeks to then get his second one. We phoned, booked the appointment online, booked the appointment on the phone, and it was for later that day. We went up to the link, and again he got refused entry because NHS Lanarkshire have it on their webpage, although I didn't think to actually look at their webpage because I was phoning to book the appointment, that there is a problem with the Pfizer vaccine and that they weren't vaccinating any people under 18, and there's a period of days where they've not been doing this. Now, it's just a point to make that I phoned twice to the appointments team, and they had searched back for several days and there was no update from NHS Lanarkshire. So although they were able to book the appointments, but there had been no update from NHS Lanarkshire to give them this information that under 18s weren't able to get it because of the issue with Pfizer vaccine. It just seems, a lack of communication where people have been attending for appointments and then getting refused entry.
Is this a general thing for the board, or is this just purely an NHS Lanarkshire issue?
Well, I think it's an NHS. I think it's lack of communication with NHS Lanarkshire and the people that do the appointments for the vaccines.
I don't know whether Anne is able to answer you. That's all I'm thinking.
Either that or one of the other
I'm aware that
members.
some of this stuff comes nationally, so sometimes it's actually for the information to come via the national service into the health boards, because this sounds to me like this would be an issue across all the health boards, not necessarily just NHS Lanarkshire, if it was a problem with the actual Pfizer vaccine.
No, Glasgow Health Board were still doing it, no problem.
So they maybe had a different batch or something, maybe it was something to do with a batch or whatever.
It's
but
just the lack of communication between NHS Lanarkshire have it on their Facebook page. But to be
the
able
actual
to
centre staff didn't know that.
Yeah, to be able to phone and book an appointment and then go to that appointment. Now, okay, we have a car, so we were able to jump in the car and go to that appointment. But for other people in the northern, the northern corridor, transport, as you'll have heard numerous times, isn't easy within the northern corridor. So, if you do that and you go for your appointment as instructed, you would expect to be able to get it.
Yeah, absolutely, Carol. I mean, I
lack of communication, I think it's there needs to be a better system.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think the fact that it has an impact on people when they're transporting their travel and issues like that are not as easily resolved for someone just rocking up and then just leaving, and it's not such a big issue. But all I can certainly say is, I mean, Evelyn, I'm assuming that for across the vaccination centres and the fact that they change all the time.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm testament to, I was redeployed to Test and Protect for a whole year, and on a maybe 4 times a day information
coming back.
Who paid the internet bill?
Ah, are we all back? Well, we best be quick.
Who didn't? Who's on the emergency card right now? So quick.
Alice, quickly, can you put your point across?
If you bear with me, Brandon, I'll make my point as quickly as I can. My point is in response to item agenda 5, the Community Champion Head of Service update on Steps Primary School and the works that were taking place there and engagement with the community regarding modular units. This may be slipped by unnoticed by the majority of the meeting, and I ask for your forbearance for 3 minutes to make you aware of what happened at Steps Primary School, library, community facilities and community kitchen, and what is currently happening. Due to remedial works at Steps Primary, North Lanarkshire Council requisitioned the community library, the 2 community meeting rooms and the community kitchen for educational purposes. And these areas were reconfigured as classrooms. During these works, 2 modular units were erected on site. Now, at the Education and Families Committee meeting of the 23rd of February 2021, Councillor Frank McNally is on record at points 3.18, 3.42, 3.46 and 3.57, committing and promising Steps community that plans were to retain a permanent presence on campus, that the community can access on the same terms effective as present. In addition, there will be full access to these community groups who use the facilities at present on the exact same terms on the same site. What is happening at the moment is Mr. Mcpherson has referred to an engagement regarding 2 modular units. From Steps' perspective and its community, this is a downgrading of our facilities. It is not securing the promise made by Frank McNally, who is on record as promising this for Steps, and 2 modular units are not equivalent to a library, 2 community meeting rooms and a community kitchen. Also in the library, there were IT facilities, photocopying, printing, there was space for meeting, there was information and display space. The meeting rooms at Steps had the highest volume of use across North Lanarkshire Council. And I wish this minuted at this meeting that what was promised to Steps community by Councillor Frank McNally on the 23rd of February 2021 does not appear to be promised via this consultation and engagement regarding 2 modular units. Thank you, Chair.
I can only ask Andrew if he can respond, but I thought that you were meant to be having the old facilities restored to you on completion of the works. And what you're saying is that is not what is happening.
That would appear not to be happening. If Mr. Mcpherson is speaking about engagement about 2 modular units, 2 modular units is no way equivalent to the library, 2 meeting rooms and a community kitchen.
Yeah,
Andrew, are you able to?
Yeah. And I think, Alice, we've had several discussions about this, and I think it's an interpretation of Councillor McNally's what he said, but that's not for me to hear to comment on. Councillor McNally will be able to speak to himself about that. But certainly with regards to what is going ahead, my understanding is the community kitchen will still be there. So that facility will be there, and the 2 modular units, that's what the engagement's about, as to what the community would want to see, as well as other sort of organisations that use that facility as well. So that's what the communication is going to be about, and how we make best use of that space for all members of the local community.
Andrew, can I ask, are the 2 modular units in addition to the restoration of the library and the meeting rooms?
No, the 2 modular units are additional. They were additionally put onto the school because of the extensive school within the primary school. So that's the reason that they were put on to accommodate while the other works were getting carried out on site at the school. Those works are now finishing. So,
but the point is the library and the meeting rooms, are they going to be restored for community use as they used to be?
The modular units can be repurposed to a library if that's the wish of the local community. But that's what the engagement's about. It's about what they want to repurpose those units to.
So what you're saying is the original library and meeting rooms are not going to be provided?
No, the original library has been repurposed as a school facility because of the expanding role. But the community kitchen, my understanding is that will still exist. And the engagement will be around about the modular units. What are they going to be used for going forward? And if people want to have the library in there as well as an additional facility, then that's fine. It's in the floor space and everything else, and that's the whole purpose of the engagement.
Well, I would only say that from what little I know, the expectation was that the library and the rooms would be reinstated. And as somebody that lives only a little way from steps and did used to go occasionally into the library, what you're saying is the facility is no longer there.
The library will still be there. It won't be the same library that was there. If people want a library, they can have a library. It's just what they want to repurpose those modular units to. If people don't want a library, then those modular units will not be a library. They will be something else. It's for the community to decide what they want to turn those modular units into. They can turn it into a library, not a problem, Brandon. And then they can also have their community kitchen still going to be there as well.
I'm all right. I think we're going round in circles here.
No, I don't think we are going round in circles, Brandon. It's what Mr. Mcpherson is omitting to say. He is saying there will be there's 2 modular units. He has not committed to reinstatement of the 2 community rooms.
No, I've never. That's exactly what I'm saying, Alice. Because I'm not committing to that because that's not happening. I'm telling you the truth. Now, sometimes I'll tell things that you don't want to hear, but I can only tell you the truth. And the truth is, my understanding is the community kitchen will be returned, and the 2 modular units will be going out for community engagement to determine, and the community will decide what they are going to be used for.
So, Brandon, we are not having reinstatement of our community rooms. And what I heard, Mr. Mcpherson is talking about what we hear at that meeting on the 23rd of February. I heard, and along with all others who were listening, Councillor McNally said that these would be restored on the exact same terms. Thank you, Brandon, for allowing me to speak.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Then I will take the opportunity to thank everybody for their participation. Thank you for your forbearance and attention during this meeting. I do think it is worthwhile hearing everybody out and understanding the issues that are relevant to the people in the Northern Corridor, but it is also important that we as a board look for positive ways to bring about solutions for them. So that's the work that we are here to be doing. But I thank you for coming along tonight, and I look forward to meeting you again at the next meeting. But in the interim, it would be good if we got some of our actions put into place so that we can be seen to be delivering to our communities. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night, Brandon.